There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. I am your host, Brian Miller, and I'm so glad you decided to join me to talk about our favorite thing in the world, yet again, Star Wars. And this week, we are talking about the finale for the show that we just finished up, The Acolyte, and we're going to kind of get some maybe differing opinions on this. We're going to find out, but before we get into all that, I want to introduce the guys that have decided to hop on with me tonight. Joining us from last week is the grumpy Jedi himself, Nick Albers. Nick, how's it going, man?
Well, I'm still grumpy, and I have my little Wookiee friend behind me, my golden doodle Dutchess, with me today. So if you hear her barking in the background, it's because she wants to share her opinion on the Acolyte and Star Wars and everything we love.
Well, Dutchess Satine.
She's a Wookiee baby.
Yeah. Well, she's Dutchess Satine, man. Love it. And joining us, finally, I'm so glad to have Usef back on from across the pond, my Wookiee co-pilot, to help navigate this world of Star Wars canon. How is it going, Usef?
It's good to be back. Really, really, really good to be back. I'm really upset that I couldn't make it last time out. It's not just a matter of time difference, but, you know, everybody's got their own stuff going on. And I'm really happy to come back and talk some Star Wars. This is an exciting time to be a Star Wars fan. It always has been, and that's nice. That's good to. I don't think I'm ever going to get bored of saying that, especially because we spent so long just wanting Star Wars, especially our generation. And I'm excited to talk about this. Yet another chapter in the journey of Star Wars, because we are on a journey. We have no idea where it's going, and we're gonna talk the hell out of this, because this needs to be addressed from multiple angles.
It really does. You know, we were just talking.
I think I'm an Acolyte wannabe. Like, I'm a Sith Acolyte wannabe. So I love Star Wars
in the show. Yeah, no, man. We were talking before we started recording. Also, you know, we were kind of throwing a lot of stuff out there to talk about it. I was like, boy, we need to stop because we just need to talk about it on the show. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking about Acolyte tonight. And now that we've got the series finale, we're going to be able to talk about the series as a whole. Kind of, you know, now that we've got this weirdly edited entire story on where weird things were placed and, you know, revelations were placed and stuff like that. And so now we can look at it as one whole tapestry, kind of figure out what the hell happened, what we think about it, and everything like that. So let's just get into it. Let's just talk about this finale for a while. Overall, I thought this was a pretty decent episode. I thought it was a pretty good wrap up for everything we had gotten so far. It answered a lot of the questions that we still had concerning the series. And, you know, and we're going to talk about that cameo here in a little bit too, because I got some stuff to say about the cameo. But I overall thought this was a pretty cool episode. Nobody survived, which I kind of saw coming since there were Sith involved. We kind of knew that, you know, no Jedi that were there to witness that Sith fight could really survive anything else, you know, moving forward. And so,
yeah.
So Usef, you saw this this series, you saw the finale. I know you're a huge advocate for villains, and I know you like the bad guys. This is the first time I've really got to talk to you about the Acolyte. What were your thoughts on the finale, the series as a whole? And are you really wanting a season 2? Are you looking forward to a season 2? I mean, what are your thoughts on it, man?
So I heard everything you guys said last time out. You opened up a lot of important, not just talking points, but general Star Wars views and Star Wars principles were discussed in between the lines, sort of thing. Like, you guys want to, I don't want to go through everything. Initially, as an episode and as a finale for that season, it was a very interesting finale. where sort of everything culminated. There was a sort of resolution, kind of like how Venestra was headed to the planet. She was saying, she anticipates a fight. No, more like a resolution. And this was that, As you say, there were no survivors. The only survivor was Osha, as far as I'm concerned, because even May, she had her memory wiped, so she didn't technically make it. Although we'll see if she comes back later for some other reason. Okay, as an episode, first things first, it was okay. It was good. And it was along the lines of the show. The show is consistent with itself, with its own themes, but with its own rhythm. But as a show overall, I'll get into my beef with the show a little bit later. In simply the title of my mood is, this isn't what I'm looking for when I look at Star Wars, and especially when I look at ACOLYTE and the dark side. But that being said, to judge it as a show, it's bringing in sinister undertones, but it doesn't throw it in your face. It takes it slow. It tries to show you this confused, the beginning of a confused, muddled, dark journey. Dark on both sides, from Jedi and from the sort of youth, that she's confused. She has so much power. We have no idea. The dark shroud of her origins is very cool. Talking about Osha and May, where the stranger will take them, I don't know. What is Pelagius doing? What's his? That is one hell of a cameo to make. That is an unbelievable introduction, and I want to see what they do with it so bad. I'm just really, really, really worried because I love this character. And a huge reason why I love this character was the mystery behind him. And I want to go back. I want to delve into the Star Wars timelines to see, because now Pelagius is coming forth into canon. How old is he? How long has he been? How long has he been around? Not that age matters that much in Star Wars, but it does. It does. If you look at Grogu, if you look at Master Yoda, if you look at Luke, if you look at Anakin, if you look at Osha and May, and if you look at Senator Palpatine, or Palpatine, and then when he became Darth Sidious, each one of them has his own path. I want to understand the path of these characters. I want to see what they do with the dark side, how they get there. So this show, I think, at the start, what I say, I know it's a very easy thing to say, but that's truly how I look at it. I need to judge it as a whole. Now that it's out, now that the season's out, this is truly the first part of something they want to build long-term. If we don't get a season 2, then there's a problem. You're leaving a gaping hole. You need a season 2. We need a season 2. I'm not sure if I necessarily would love a season 2, but you can't just leave the story like this. So I love Star Wars, and we need to tie up loose ends because you're going back. So I want to see how it fits into the timelines that we know. And I would be really upset if, because of all the hate that the show is getting and the negativity surrounding it from so many fans out there, that I just don't want to see them succumb and then not do something live action and then just turn it into novels and whatever. You guys brought up an awesome point last time about, so this show is not meant to have people rushing to pick up High Republic novels. We've talked about High Republic novels aplenty, and I've bought them, and I'm yet to read all of them. You know what I mean? And there's a problem there because it's just like a block for me. I'm not sure which timeline to keep looking into. I don't want to get too deep into another timeline of novels, especially ones which I might not love the genre. I'm not into young adult, but young adult is the theme that everybody's looking into at the moment. I believe so. Would you guys classify this as young adult? Again, this is more JG territory to give us his 2 cents on this. But what would you guys think? Everything I've said until now is just like my impression, my feeling. If you guys get what I mean, I'm looking for something far more mature and really deep and intense. It doesn't have to be bloody or gory. By the way, this season gave us some blood, some gore. And it gave us a bucket full in an episode, and then a lovely little dash of finesse and blood right in the face at the end of there. And as we said, no survivors, right? And exactly, May was she was originally given the task of killing a Jedi without using her lightsaber. Well, Osha showed her how to do that in the last episode. She effing force choked Soul. That was big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nick. I mean, you're absolutely right. Well, actually, before we get to Nick, you brought up something, Usef, that we probably need to touch on too with the High Republic, because this could be a show that gets people to want to go back and read those books, because there were a couple of mentions in this series of what happened in the novels, like the Great Hyperspace Disaster from Light of the Jedi, possibly Vernestra's apprentice. If it's Emery, I'm going to lose my mind, because as soon as she said it was an old pupil of hers, I was like, is it Emery? Like, are you kidding me?
That would be very cool if he's a character that you've seen already play from the Republic novels. That's amazing.
And so you brought up a good point about jumping between time periods, basically, reading the books in like the saga era, and then going back and reading the High Republic. That's why I did not read any of the Phase 2 stuff at all until it was all out. They were all out. And then I sat down and binged Phase 2 so that I could just stay in that time period and just stay with these characters the whole time. And I think with Phase 1, I read them as they came out, but there were other books kind of sprinkled throughout the middle of it, that came out at the same time in, the saga era. And I think reading them chronologically the way I did and kind of binging them really did help stick with that time period a lot. It didn't cause as much confusion with the characters and stuff, and it was weird because going from like Phase 1 and then going back to Phase 2, and now I'm in Phase 3. Now I'm back with these characters from Phase 1 that I took this huge break from. And now it's like, okay, now I got to remind myself where they were all at, what all happened. This is this person. This is, and so I think that's a good point too with High Republic. So the fact that this show came out so close to the end of the novels kind of coming out, because we're in Phase 3, we're in that final phase. If anybody wants to go back and start reading those books now, by the time you read Phase 2 and all of Phase 1, Phase 3 is going to be completely finished, and then you can cap it with the ACOLYTE. So I just wanted to touch on that also. That was a really good point that you brought up. Nick,
also, like, if you actually had to go through these phases, if I need to read all of them, and this is a question for you and JG and Steven later, we'll talk about this hopefully in the next episode, more towards High Republic and the novels and what's coming out, because we definitely want to get into, looking into what's coming out and telling our listeners and me primarily what's coming out that's worth reading.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a particular genre or a feeling that I want to get from novels, like I told you how much I loved reading Tarkin, and I read Lords of the Sith before it. So you can see the theme, obviously, that I want to love like the bad guy. But then when I read Leia's novels, those were amazing as well. But so that's the thing. Like, clearly, there's a certain genre that I like and a certain genre that I love. Would it be possible to reading just the novels that catered to my taste, and I'd still get a great story, or would I kind of have to read a lot of the young adult stuff and the comics and stuff? Do I have to read all of it to get it, or can I read half of it or less than half of it and still be, oh yeah, those are the books with the climax, that's cool, the rest of them are background stuff, they're noise. No, excuse me, I don't mean noise, because noise technically means they're not that useful. Mm-hmm. But the point is, are they supplementary or are they required? You know that term, right? Required or preferred. Yeah.
As you're reading the High Republic, they're almost required reading. Not all of them, but 80% of them I think are. Mainly because, as an example, there's when you get towards the end of Phase 2, right? Phase 2 ends with this giant Night of Sorrows. There's this huge battle on the planet Dalna between the Path of the Open Hand and the Jedi. It crosses over like 3 different books. Like it's this huge event. It's the culmination of Phase 2, basically. And there is a major death in that battle, a major death, a character that had been in every single Phase 2 book, major death. It was a huge deal. And it was in the young adult novel. It wasn't in the Del Rey novel. It was in the young adult novel, which was weird. Like, I thought, with Phase 2, those last 2 books, the young adult book and the Del Rey book, I thought they should have just combined that whole story and then maybe split it into 2 books from that point. And it was just kind of a weird way to do it, because I was reading that one. I was like, man, why did they die here? Because And the way they crossed over, because I read that first and then I picked up the Del Rey book, they were in that book again because that battle was at the end of that book. It was a different story, but the battle from this one took place at the end of this one. And so it was kind of jarring to see this person die, and then they're at the beginning of this book again, and you're like, wait, what the hell? And so to a degree, I think you need to read them. I think it's a case-by-case kind of thing. There's a couple of them I don't think are that big of a deal, but all the stuff with Vernestra, I think, is important when she's a kid, when she takes Emery as her apprentice. I think that's important just because it's character development for her. There's, everything's crossing. There's which one was it? I think there is one in phase 2 that you could probably skip. I think it's Quest for Planet X. I think that's the one you could skip because it just crosses over with that battle for like all of like 2 pages, and then it goes back off on its own again. And so it really doesn't contribute anything to the main battle. But as they've written it in a way where you kind of have to read everything as you're going, and if you want to get the whole picture, you know what I'm saying?
No, I get you. But more towards, I mean, I want to know what Nick feels, because if we're looking at, so we saw a brief intro, a brief cameo for Yoda, which talks about a lot of stuff to come. Because as soon as, they bring up Yoda at a very good point immediately after a sort of foreboding statement where they want the High Republic Senate or Chancellor or whatever, they want to probe into the Jedi's managerial methods and their strategy and who's in there and who's doing what, and we want to see if you're handling things correctly. How many Jedi are active at that time, without not including younglings in Jedi Academy?
I have no idea. They talk about
it's in the thousands, right?
It's thousands easily. There were 10,000 Jedi at the time of the prequels, and so I'm guessing it'd be right around that same number. Honestly, the Purge.
And that's really, really see. I think that saying that statement out loud is an important statement. Like actually saying, oh, by the way, see these Jedi? Yeah, we only know about, when we see the Council, and then we actually delve into a few of the characters through the movies, and then the Clone Wars, and then everything that we know through what's standardly out there, what's most commonly known. You'd think they were like, these masters, they're like a couple of hundred, and they've got a very select few younglings they're recruiting. They're a lot. This is a military.
Yeah.
Right? Well, maybe not a military, basically. But you know what I mean?
Right. Nick,
we'll get back to going around the Jedi, but I want to hear from Nick as well, because I want to talk Acolyte first, and then we'll talk bigger picture.
Yeah, no, we can do that. Nick, you're hearing all this. You're hearing everything that we're babbling on about. As somebody who hasn't read the novels, where do you kind of stand on all of this?
Well, I started to listen to the High Republic because JG and Steve and even you, Brian, were talking about them, and kind of really praising them, and especially Steve and JG. And but unlike because phase 1 takes place, I guess, during the middle of what is considered the High Republic, and then you jump back almost like 200 years or 150. I don't know. To phase 2, and then you then, from what I'm hearing, you then jump back to the characters you had in phase 1 in phase 3. And to me, I was like, that makes absolutely no sense. Who wrote the series? Yoda? And
it's just like the film trilogies.
Yes, it's just like, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and start with phase 2 first. So I started doing that, and I actually enjoyed them, the ones that I listened to. But like, I'm a guy that I love Star Wars. I grew up on the expanded universe, which we will get into later in the show and everything. So it took me a really long time to slowly get into the quote unquote new canon and everything. And I just said to myself, because everybody, time is valuable. And I just said to myself, I don't have enough time in the day or during the week or, so on to read all these novels. I have some, as you can tell, on the back of my bookshelf and everything. But I just don't have the time to read them all. So I prefer, for me, if I'm going to get something, I want a TV show, because it's been 5 years since the last movie we got. So it's TV show or nothing of Star Wars. Video games. We got Jedi Survivor and whatever the other one was. Fallen Order. I'm sorry. Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. And then we got the new one coming out at the end of August. So for me, that's the type of media and Star Wars consumption I would like to indulge in. Now, like Usef said, when they did the investors call, I think it was in 2020 during the height of during the height, or 2019 something, during the height of COVID and everything, and they announced all these shows, they announced all these movies that were coming out. They announced, and one of the shows that everybody was like super stoked about was the ACOLYTE. I think across the board from everybody in our group was like, that's a show we're actually looking forward to watching and seeing. And then we didn't hear anything about it. And then when we finally got it and everything, I was looking forward to it. And I'm not going to rehash what I said last week. But what I will say is the last 3 episodes of the ACOLYTE, actually, I am going to talk about what I said last week. You had all the ingredients to make an amazing show. You had a great, era. You were far enough back where you weren't in the prequels, you weren't nothing, but you were close enough to where you could bring some of those characters in. You were starting new characters, and you were going to delve into the dark side and the waning days of the High Republic and everything, which would lead us into the prequel era. You had everything there. Everything was set up for you. You had all the ingredients to make this 8-course meal, because it's an 8-episode season. And rather than get an 8-course 5-star meal, I feel like for the first 5 episodes, I got McDonald's. No, I didn't even get McDonald's. I got frickin' Taco Bell. I got Taco Bell for Star Wars. And for people who like Taco Bell, hey, that's your thing. Nothing wrong with that. But I sat there and I told you guys, it's like, I'm tapping out. I wish you nothing but the best for everybody. But I said later, I'm going to stick with it, because I didn't want you guys to take it offline and everything. It's like, no, I'm going to watch it. And my son, who's 11, is watching the show. And so far, he likes it. So I stuck around. In episode 6, I was like, okay. This is intriguing. I like it. Episode 7 was... Episode 7 was great.
You guys would have had to have seen Nick's chat in our group chat.
Do not get me wrong about episode 7, but my issue with episode 7, it is the exact same episode of episode 3. But why does episode 7 look so much better than episode 3? And then we get to episode 8. And episode 8 to me was, I'll be honest, it was probably one of the better single episodes of Star Wars we've probably had, I would probably put it up in the top 10.
Really? That's
Probably.
Top 10 episodes?
Top 10 episodes.
Of live action new Star Wars that we've gotten in the Disney era?
No, I'm talking overall.
Ever.
Of all
Yeah.
Whoa.
You're crazy. You're nuts.
Well, bear in mind, I still haven't finished the Bad Batch. I have to finish the Bad Batch too.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
Look,
That's a whole nother episode.
I'm the guy.
No, I'm happy. I'm
also
happy
the guy
you're
who is
so positive.
passionate.
Listen, look. If
No,
you look at
let
this
me
person
finish.
who was
I'm
really
also the guy-
negative on this, and all of a sudden he's really positive.
Yeah, he
That's
was.
actually a show doing what. That's actually doing his job. Can I just say
But
that?
let me finish. I'm a guy.
Yeah.
who
Go ahead. Sorry, I
was-
interrupted you there.
No, you're fine. I remember when Obi-Wan Kenobi came out, and everybody was, talking about how the first episode was great, and everyone's like, yeah, and then everybody was talking about the last episode and everything. And I remember another podcast I was watching, and like, why couldn't we get this for the, other 4 or 5 episodes? And I'm rewatching Kenobi right now, and I absolutely love Kenobi. Where I'm going with the last episode is, it did everything we talked about last week, Brian. It wrapped up everything. It set up everything. But if you have to end the story, it's a good ending, because the diehard Star Wars fans know who that was in the cave. That was Darth Plagueis and everything. But for your general run-of-the-mill Star Wars fan who may not know, the whole, they're like, who the hell was that? And
Just
everything.
some lizard guy hanging out in a cave.
Yeah, just some lizard guy.
Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi ended up in the cave on the wannabe.
I so wanted to love this show. I did. And like I said, for the first 5 episodes, I got Taco Bell. And then I got some amazing coffee. And then I got a good dessert. I got like pumpkin cheesecake for dessert with coffee. And I'm like, man, this is great. And as I mentioned before, if we're talking about renewing a season or the series based off the last episode, or I would even go the last 3, then that is 8 out of 10. Give me, because 8 out of 10. That's how good that show was. The show I don't want to say redeemed itself, but the show showed what it could be. The first 5 episodes, 5 out of 10. I mean, if that. So I'm going overall, the series as a whole, first season, 5 out of 10. So that's why I'm like, if we get another season, okay, you picked it up. Let's see where it goes. But don't give me don't give me the first part of the Acolyte. Give me the second part of the Acolyte, where it actually looks like you spent $150 million of your $180 million budget. Okay? Give me that. Okay? You work for Disney. So by all means, Disney has the money. They bought Star Wars for a reason. They want to put out media for people to consume, for people to talk about. And guess what? As much as people have been trashing the Acolyte, there's an old phrase in show business. There's no bad news no news is bad
There's
news. Because everything
there's no such thing as bad publicity. All publicity is good publicity.
Yeah. So, y'all, I wanted to like the show. I did. And like I as soon as I saw the lizard guy, it's like, that's Plagueis. And I was like, okay. And then, I was like, hey, they brought in Yoda. But then, as I talked about with everyone, and I want to get Brian's opinions on this.
Oh, do you?
They did
Hang on.
Soul.
I want to jump in and ask you
fucking
something.
Dirty on that show.
I want to jump in and ask you something, Nick.
Okay, what's up?
I want to get a little bit more of your opinion on this statement I'm going to make, which I touched on. If we were to look at this show as a whole right now, I think we want to look at slightly bigger picture, and then I want to hear Brian's take on all this, because Brian is, he's my reference when I go to the global sort of view on this, because I have a certain global view about how things fit together, because I have a certain perspective on the stories and how they come across to me and how they fit in with each other. So I think you and I, Nick, especially when I kept prattling on about, I want this, I want a dark side vibe, I want something which delves into a little bit of lore, give me this sort of angle from the Star Wars perspective, give me this angle of Star Wars, this perspective. I think the role of this show is to give people a different kind of into Star Wars, whereby they're getting, maybe it's young adult, maybe whatever. I don't like categorizing and naming things too much, but this gives people a look into it from a new story, it is a fresh story, even if they killed off 90% of the characters they introduced, and that's a whole different topic of how you tell a story. But they're introducing two heavy hitters here.
Game of Thrones.
They're bringing in two very big hitters. One of them, the general people who are coming into Star Wars, or the casual Star Wars, or the heavy Star Wars viewers who just would never pick up a book. They might not realize that this is Pelagus and just how important he is. They'll just have heard of him in episode 3, and that's that. And then as soon as they realize, oh, this is really deep, this is really cool, everybody's going on about this Pelagus stuff. Okay, this could be really cool. So it's kind of like you going into this company or an institution or hearing great things about something new, and you know it's always been there. There's so much deeper than what you know about it, and this is just a part of it. So it sort of reassures you and shows you that there's more to come, more darkness or more intrigue or more etc. And then you're also bringing in Yoda as a cameo. I know you don't bring him into the season. That's not why they're there. They're there to not necessarily keep you hooked. I'm talking about a story here. They're just bringing it in to show you that you can have more, that you will have so much more because of this show. And this show is going to show you a familiar face, Yoda, a big master, someone who knows what's going on. But I have a problem with this sort of global perspective. If you think that this role for this show is required in Star Wars, that's my first question to you. Like, do you think this is needed? Think it's good? Do you think it brings in any added value? You think this is something that's good for us, that's good for Star Wars? I think off the bat, it's great to see. And this is something this show has done, even if, I have a lot of guys, the Star Wars Egypt fan pages and a lot of other Star Wars friends here, extremely critical of the show. They're just watching it to pass the time. A couple of other guys are really intrigued about where this is going just because, hey, it's new. I want to see what's what. This is a new show. They're saying it costs this much. Very intrigued. But actually, what I'm super intrigued by is not only is it where it's going to go and what role it will help us in. Later on in episode 1, 2, and 3, every single Jedi is like, the Sith have been dead for thousands of years or hundreds of years or whatever. And then Yoda's there, but then Pelagus is also there. So they're still not going to intertwine. They're still not going to meet. So there's no showdown coming into season 3 or the end of season 2 where Yoda meets Pelagus, for example. There's no way that that's going to happen, right? And then at the same time, Ki-Adi-Mundi shows up, and there's an inconsistency into him showing up in the first place because apparently he wasn't supposed to have been alive then. I don't care about that at all. They can X that. They can change it. Didn't Mundi in episode 1 himself say, well, the Sith, this is improbable? Didn't he say that in the council? I'm a little bit fuzzy right now, but he did. So you're literally canceling out, because there's no way Mundi was on this council or was in the Jedi Order at the time of the High Republic, and he saw Jedi dying, and he heard and understood that there was a dark Force user out there, and then he didn't investigate it further to find out whether or not it was Sith or not. When the guy, if I understand that basically Venestra is just concealing all of this entire mission into sort of like the black tapes or like whatever it is, you know what I mean? But this is something that's really worrying me. So yeah, I'm sorry I don't mean to jump on this, but I want to get your response, Nick, first about what you think the role of this show is. And because every one of them has a show. I know Obi-Wan Kenobi's show, it was a lot of fan service. We all know that. It was something to help win back the viewers. But that's not the role of the show. That's just a bonus. The role was really to show us Vader, to show us the Inquisitors, to show us Obi-Wan Kenobi, to show us what was going on in those years when he was protecting Luke and what it looked like. And that was important. That was because we have never seen deeper into the aftermath of what it was like to be, apart from Rebels, of course, what it was like to be during the Empire era, right? And of course, the video games, and we're getting more and more of that era because we want to see more and more of that era. And we're not seeing a whole lot just yet, apart from those two shows. And then all of a sudden, we're going back. So these roles that I'm saying, these shows try to fill in the gaps. Filling in the gaps is good because you essentially, are we going to see the entire timeline in shows and chronological, like you're going to see a 300-year-old story being told here? Like, what do you guys think about all this stuff I'm spewing out?
So, okay, now
I know I threw way too much at you right now. I'm sorry.
So just keep it simple. What's the question is, do I feel
ACOLYTE, first of all, yeah. So ACOLYTE as a show and how it fits into like the global picture. What do you think about that? And then think about, whether there was inconsistencies, whether you think that's a positive, whether you think that's fine.
This is what I will give the ACOLYTE credit. And I'm going to give I'm not a hater of the ACOLYTE, despite the fact that, it may have seemed that way. And despite the fact in our group chat, it may seem like I'm a hater. I'm not. I like the fact that they took a chance because they went, as I mentioned, they went into an era.
Yeah.
Hardcore, like, unless you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, you don't know this era. Unless you're even a passionate, I consider myself a passionate Star Wars fan, but I don't read the books. So I appreciate them swinging for the fences, using the baseball reference, to create this story. I just don't think episodes 1 through 5 were executed well at all. Episodes 6 through 8, yeah. I kind of have an issue with 7 because 7 didn't need to be where the second to last episode of the season. It needed to be somewhere else. But those 3 episodes were well done. They told a very well thought out story. Like, in reality, you could probably, I don't know, like, you can maybe just watch episodes 6 and 8 and be done with it and be like, okay. And then, I don't know. I like the fact that they, as I mentioned before, they took a chance. They took a chance. I give them credit for that. It did not hit for me. So, as I mentioned before, if it's just based on episodes 6, 7, and 8 to get us a second season, sure. Let's see us. Do I need a second season of ACOLYTE? No. If it's based off episodes 1 through 5, absolutely not. I do not want a second season if it's based on episodes 1 through 5. If it's based on the series as a whole, as me and Brian talked about, it's a coin flip. I'll tell you that. I know there was an article mentioned that Leslie Henlin wants to do some Old Republic stuff. Look, you're gonna have to win me over if you want to do Old Republic, because and that's technically all the Old Republic that most people know. That is all like legends. That was the expanded universe and everything, and that's stuff that even casual Star Wars fans would be like, "Oh yeah, I know about that." So they took a chance. I give them credit for it. Do I think this is required watching to move the story forward? Where it stands right now, no. I'm sorry, it's not. But then again, most people who know and love Star Wars know episodes 1, know the Skywalker saga, the Skywalker era that I'm going to call it, which takes place 32 years before the Battle of Yavin, all the way through 35, 36 years after the Battle of Yavin. So, Brian, you really haven't had a chance to talk.
No, you guys are good.
Upload.
You guys have brought up a lot of stuff, and I've actually been taking notes as you guys were talking too, so I could make sure I answer everything. You guys have brought up some really, really good stuff. Usef, you were talking about what role does this show play in the overall arcing galaxy of everything. I think I'm going to contradict myself here a little bit. Okay. Nick asked, is this show essential watching? No, I don't think this show is an essential Star Wars story yet. I don't think it is yet is the word. Because I think this show, what it's setting up, since we had that little Plagueis cameo and everything like that, what it's setting up is they've teased us for so long about answering the question as to where Anakin came from. Who is Anakin's father? Who actually conceived Anakin with the Force? And I think they're finally giving us that answer. The Plagueis cameo confirms that in my brain anyway. That's where they're going with it. They're finally going to answer that story, or that question, I mean. Because one of the things that they brought up with the girls is that, and this is just me theorizing, and this is just me thinking out loud. The girls, the big reveal of the show wasn't who started the fire, who killed all the witches. That wasn't the main mystery of the show. The main mystery of the show was what was so special about these two girls. And what was so special about them was that they were the same person. They weren't twins. They were basically two sides of the exact same coin of the same person, which is interesting when you start thinking about Anakin, because Anakin was kind of the same way, being created with the same sort of method that we can assume. There was always Anakin and Vader. There was a duality there. When he was Vader, you could always tell Anakin was there at the same time. And I never refer to Vader and Anakin as the same person. Physically, they are, but spiritually and emotionally and mentally, they are not the same person. But there are aspects of both sides there. So it really does lend itself really well to what happened with May and Osha, with one being a lot darker, one being a little more on the light side. But I just thought that was kind of interesting also. I want to bring up the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing for a second, Usef, because that was something at first that kind of caught me off guard, seeing him there, because I love Ki-Adi-Mundi. For some reason, even Kirsty's asked me, why do you like him so much? I'm like, I do. He's awesome. I don't know. What about the droid attack on the Wookiees? Like, that's what was important to him, was the Wookiees. Wookiees are important. We have to take care of the Wookiees, right? So seeing him there, I was like, is that Ki-Adi-Mundi? And then when the credits rolled, it was him, right? And so I was like, okay, that's cool. I didn't give two craps about his age. I didn't care about his birth. I don't care about Wikipedia altering his birthday. I don't care about any of that. And none of that even matters, But him bringing up the fact of saying the Sith have been extinct for millennium. The word Sith was only used in this series one time.
Yeah.
And everybody that heard him use that word is dead. Everybody who heard him say that word is dead.
Except for Yoda.
Yoda didn't hear him say that.
Well, Yoda didn't hear him say that. That's true.
Yoda wasn't
even there. Yeah.
Vernestra wasn't even there. She wasn't there to hear the word Sith.
Yeah. And Soul didn't say, there's someone who claims to be Sith. No, none of that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ray got her memory wiped.
and she got her memory wiped. Exactly. So nobody knows about the Sith. There's no canon break there. That is, and there are other Force sects out there. We know there's other religions out there that use the Force. You know, when you start reading some of the High Republic stuff, Jeddah was like the hub for all of these different religious groups that came that viewed the Force different ways and used it in different ways, and how the Force affected them differently. And it even touches on a lot of them in the comics, which was really, really cool. I mean, there's some really cool Force sects, if you want to call them, you know, different religions with the Force. And so their brain, you know, think about Ki-Adi-Mundi for a second. When confronted with the idea that a Sith could exist, the first thing he went to was, but the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. So he's not going, he was instantly doubted Qui-Gon. He instantly was like, there's no way. So even if he had been confronted with the idea of a Sith in this time period, he would have been the same. There's no way. That's not a Sith. It's got to be something different. It's got to be somebody else. It's got to be something else, right? So I'm not too worried about the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing. I think it was a nice cameo to have him there. Yeah, it kind of blew up a lot of what people thought about Star Wars, but this is a whole new Star Wars, you know, and we'll talk about the EU here in a little bit and some other stuff and some mailbag questions. But I didn't really, the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing didn't really bother me that much.
So,
go ahead. Somebody gonna say something? Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I thought about it as you were chatting, because everybody that heard Darth
Kamir.
Yeah, him.
Darth Toothers.
Yeah. So there are two people. Well, there's one person that knows their apprentice is no longer there and has fallen, and that is Venestra. As soon as she did the light whip, I'm like, and I saw his scars.
Scar.
It's like, I'm like, they had a falling out of some kind. And it's like, so she knows something. And then I think a lot of people, and maybe it got talked about in the novel, the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon canon novel.
Master and Apprentice.
Yes, that
good
one.
book. Good book.
Qui-Gon, when he reported back in episode 1, stated after his run-in with Maul on Tatooine, he said it was a Sith. And then that's where Ki-Adi-Mundi said the Sith have been extinct for millennia. So how did Qui-Gon know it was a Sith?
Qui-Gon said he believed that it was a Sith. I believe it was a Sith Lord. That's what he thought.
Okay.
And when Obi-Wan asks him, as soon as he gets onto the ship after that fight, he's like, what was it? And he's like, I don't know, but it was definitely trained in the Jedi arts. And so I think just the ferocity that Maul brought to that fight, trying to take out Qui-Gon and trying to get the Queen, I think that anger and that ferocity that he brought towards that fight was enough that Qui-Gon was like, whoa, this is something entirely different. And this is something that was a red lightsaber. That was, you know, he was really coming at me. And Maul just radiates anger and rage and hate and you know, he radiates it. You know, you see that later on in Clone Wars when you see Maul. He's just a rageful creature is what he is, just hateful creature. And so I think Qui-Gon, and remember, keep in mind too, Qui-Gon was very big up on the prophecies and on, you know, a lot of archive stuff. He was a scholar, you know, more of a scholar than he was a warrior. And so I think Qui-Gon had a lot of time to think about it too, between Tatooine and Coruscant. Think of how long that trip was. You know, he thought about it the whole time and meditated on it. And I'm sure once he even realized what he was believing himself, he even thought about, do I even bring this to the council? Like, how am I going to say this to them to make them feel like, you know, that maybe I'm not crazy. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Cause like I said, nobody came to Ki-Adi-Mundi in this series and was like, it's a Sith. Nobody did. You know, what did Venestra say? She's like, this was something different. This was, I don't know what this was. And she was already thinking about who it could be. And it, you know, she ended up, it was who she thought it was. It was her old pupil. And I'm hoping that it was Emery from the books, because he had a bit of a dark streak in him in those books also. So I'm like I said, the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing doesn't bother me, and the whole Sith thing doesn't bother me. But I will say this, you guys have heard the term in filmmaking and TV. You guys have heard the term Chekhov's gun, right? Where if you see Chekhov's,
No, what was that?
So the idea of Chekhov's gun is that if you see a handgun in a movie or in a show, at some point in that movie or show, that gun has to go off. That they don't show it for no reason, right? And I feel like if they're not going to do a season 2 of ACOLYTE, it all hinges on whether they're going to do a season 2. If they do no season 2 of ACOLYTE, Plagueis's cameo was completely and totally unnecessary.
Exactly, wasted.
It had no basis. It had nothing to do with anything else. And
we're not even sure what's going on. If he knows the stranger, if he doesn't, if he's watching him, did he create Osha and May? Did he not? Did he? Is this simply? Was this so? One of the great, and I think this might just be a stroke of genius. I love this, by the way, about Star Wars. So Rogue One was entirely built off of 2 important concepts. Yeah. One of them being that the Death Star plans were stolen. So the fact that someone created a flaw in the Death Star and that that Death Star plans were stolen, that's the first principle. And the second one was this sentence: many Buffins died trying to bring us this.
Well, that was the second Death Star. That was the second.
That was the second Death Star. Okay, well, here's the thing. No, you're right. But I took that statement to be, actually, this is an important part for me to think about. Okay, so you can correlate that statement with something that you could easily say for the first Death Star as well.
Yeah.
Right. So if you also took for actual Pelagius, so if you took the story, have you ever heard the story of Darth Pelagius the Wise? He was so powerful with the Force that he manipulated the midichlorians to create life.
Yeah.
That statement. This could be it, or Anakin could be it. As you said, you might be coming towards answering this question. But this might be a stroke of genius where you say, this is how we introduce Pelagius, and this is how we introduce a very, very cool, dark sort of story which we can use here.
Later on.
I'm really, really, this one is for my sake. I'm not talking for Star Wars' sake at this point. I really hope they don't waste this. This is bigger than the Panzer tank in the Second World War. This is bigger than superhuman soldiers. This is bigger. For Star Wars, this could be that big. They could take this one little concept and this character and create an entire brilliant religion out of this within it. And this is the Sith. We need to introduce to you the Sith. You think you know the Sith? You don't know the Sith. And this is what the Sith is in canon. I really, really want that. And something that, so you mentioned all these different religions within the Force, not necessarily religions per se, but yeah, if you say religions, if you say sects, if you say that they use the Force in different ways, I actually am very, very intrigued by this concept of having the Force be similar to Kung Fu. Hear me out. If George Lucas if he based Star Wars to space samurai, just to cut it short, right? I mean, everything that sort of entails, if you hear that term, right? So you're talking about this sort of ultra discipline. If you recently watched Shogun or played Ghost of Tsushima, or you know what samurai are, and this sort of dying on your sword, honor is greater than anything. This is a certain religion. And if you talk about the many disciplines that they use to utilize their sense of honor and their code, and that was his inspiration, amazing. Their code, because you have a higher power, and the Force is that sort of intrinsic value of that power. And if we are all studying the Force, if Brian and Nick and I and JG and Steven and Jay and all of us are studying the Force in different ways, then in the same way in Kung Fu, we're just using them differently. I'm Tiger, you're Mantis, he's Monkey, he's whatever. And then if you use them in these different ways, but you're still all of you using the Force, and that can tie in beautifully to all sorts of arcs within Star Wars, to exactly as you said on the last podcast episode, when you bring in someone like Asajj Ventress, who was never actually properly Sith, was she? She was just a dark side user. Sure, Darth Tyrannus was training her in a manner where he was a Jedi and he taught her some things that he learned about the Sith and he knew, but then she wasn't really Sith. So, and then if you look at the Inquisitors, they're not Sith either. They're just dark side Force users.
Right.
They're not even trained to be within the Sith, purposefully, I might add. So you can use the Force in these sort of, sure, they're just lower level. They weren't really fully initiated, let's say. But that doesn't mean you can't really use these things. And then we come into the concept of gray Jedi, and you come to the concept of, well, even Jedi themselves, there was protectors and guardians and people who wielded the Force in different ways. And there's different, well, Usef, we already have different ways. You're talking about Kung Fu. Well, there's form 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. I'm not talking about just lightsaber forms. I'm talking about how you manipulate and use the Force. Am I right? Am I barking up the wrong tree here? Am I reading too much into this?
No, I think it really does. Like it goes back to the Caddy thing where it could be anything. Why do we instantly have to go to our mortal enemy?
Yeah, but I really want it to be something. Like I really want it to be something substantial. Bringing in Pelagus right like this.
Yeah.
This could be gold.
It's got potential. It's got the potential because
and that's why I want a season 2. Like I need a season 2 because I need this closure.
So I get why people want season 2. I do. Again, if it's based off the last 3 episodes, then by all means, then yeah, I'm like, let's see where it goes. If it's based off but first 5 episodes, no. If it's based on the whole season, coin flip. But this is where I will stop both of you saying, oh, we need a second season. Look.
I didn't say that.
Or we should. This
I
is why
need a second season.
I need a second season. This is why we should get a second.
I want
Hold on.
I want a home run. Man. You mentioned baseball. I need this.
Because the Clone Wars of Dave Filoni and George Lucas, which we will get to in the mailbag question here in a little bit, was canceled after 5 seasons. They came back, did a 6th season on Netflix. They were going to do a 7th season. That got canceled and everything. So all of a sudden, we were just left holding.
I never knew it got canceled. I never knew that.
Yeah, it got canceled twice.
Yeah,
wow.
It did.
And it was because, people are like, this show is horrible. I don't want to say horrible, but they were saying this show is for kids. We don't like everything.
Yeah, what wasn't getting basically any love.
But then it developed a hardcore fan base. And then when the canon reset, we got Dark Disciple, which was one of the first canon books I read, which was amazing.
Great.
Yeah. So when people say we need a second or we need seasons to complete the story, no, you don't. There are other ways you can tell the story. So,
I'll take that. I just want continuation.
We also got, I forgot which. It was years ago. I think it was right before they announced season 7 of the Clone Wars was coming back. They were doing some. They did some like computer graphic animation that they hadn't fully fleshed out, and Filoni was actually going to bring in the Yuuzhan Vong and everything in the Clone Wars. So I get where you're going, Usef. I get where why hey, Plagueis is such a big deal and everything. Plagueis is only a big deal because guess what? Senator Palpatine understood Anakin was conflicted. Mm-hmm. And he was like, know what? And he's been conflicted for a while because he's been conflicted about
this guy that I murdered.
He's been conflicted for a while. He's helped conflict him. Started to turn against. Yes, Dutchess, sit down. So she even agrees.
She agrees with you, man.
So, and it's just because of that one, that 30-second, which was sheer gold. And what did we get?
Like you have it, man.
We got a book out of it, which was, by some measure, by most people, was some of the best, Star Wars storytelling ever. And the film scene in that part, some of the best stories seen ever. That said, I'm going to let her out. So I will be right back.
I
think she was disagreeing with Nick, not agreeing with Nick.
You might be. One of the things I think this show needed, though, was, like I said, the biggest mystery of the show was about the girls and the fact that they were, the same person. That was really the only big thing about it. And that was the big reveal at the end of the show. It wasn't even that Plagueis was hiding on the island. It was the big reveal that they were the same.
Oh, no, Plagueis isn't really a big reveal. Exactly. And that's quite a different mystery altogether. What does that mean? The same. Yeah.
But since that was revealed toward the end of the show, I feel like this show, because, one of the problems that I think I said last week on the show was that the first 4 episodes had some weird choppy edits to them. They were edited weirdly. They were, it was just kind of choppy in places. And now we know from episode 7 that it's because a lot of those scenes from the 3rd episode were in the 7th episode. You see a lot of stuff from a certain point of view this time, and see it from a different point of view from the Jedi's POV. And I feel like that was an unnecessary thing to do to the show. And I feel like it broke it up in a way, like we were talking about the High Republic earlier with the books, about how, I guess we did that. Now we're going to go tell this story real quick. And then we come back and tell this story. And it's
I really wasn't a fan of this.
And so, and Book of Boba Fett did the exact same thing. Weird, like that 2 episodes of Mandalorian in the middle of Book of Boba Fett. And
it ruins my momentum, I'll be honest.
It does. That's exactly the word. That momentum. It ruins the momentum of the show.
Well, the whole thought process all of a sudden just put on pause. Why? You just gave me the damn story already. Yeah.
So I think what this show needed, and I want to see a re-edit of it, because they did it with Kenobi. They added all the episodes together, took out some of the filler crap, and they made a really cool Obi-Wan Kenobi movie out of it. I want to see somebody re-edit Acolyte and not do the weird flashback scenes. Tell it chronologically. Tell it in the order of the events that happened. Show like Nick said earlier, show everything that happened on Brendok. Was that the name of the planet?
Brendok,
yeah.
Show everything that happened on Brendok in the order that it happened in, fully, completely, from the Jedi's POV, from Maeve, and from everybody's point of view. You don't need this Back to the Future 3 kind of thing going on with this show. You know what I mean? Where you go back and you see, they were looking at that from a distance. That's why they reacted at that. You know what I mean? You don't need
completely
all.
Agree with you. Completely agree with you.
Completely unneeded. And so go back and tell the story chronologically, the way Star Wars is meant to be watched originally. George Lucas has said, Star Wars was meant to be viewed chronologically. Show it that way. And I feel like a lot of because it's going to take out almost an entire episode. Like Nick said, episodes 3 and 7 were the same footage. Basically, it's going to shorten it out. It's going to take a lot of the filler crap out, I think. And just because we know what the big reveal is going to end up being later on, it's still a big reveal to the characters. Think about if you watch episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the original films. Vader tells Luke he's his father. You're like, what? No way. But if you watch them chronologically the way they're meant to be watched, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
you're waiting.
You know at that point that the Vader is Luke and Leia's.
Brian, then here's the question.
Okay.
How are you going to show your son the saga?
I know. I still haven't decided yet. I still haven't figured it out because I showed Kirsty episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And later she told me, you probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, you mentioned this before.
Yeah, so I haven't decided yet. But you get to that point, and for you, it ruins that moment. But for Luke Skywalker, that's the end of the world. And you get to watch him react to something you already knew about. And it's the same thing with this show. You find out, if you tell it chronologically, you find out they're the same girl. You find out that I always forget his freaking name, Soul. That Soul chose which girl to save in the fire when the catwalks collapse. He chose which one he was going to save. And so, because he's holding them both, and he realizes he can't hold them both. And so he lets go of May and he saves Osha.
They did so
they did do him dirty. You're right. But when you watch the show chronologically then, and you watch all the events as they unfold, you're not watching Indara die right off the rip of the show. You're not watching Tobin take this poison and you're like, what the hell? Why?
Yes.
You're not watching Kelnaka just, that's all I'm going to get.
What is this I'm seeing? This just feels like a big hot mess.
Yeah. And so it was told so just disjointedly, I think, was one of the biggest problems with this show.
Completely agree.
And so going back, I think watching it chronologically would have made a lot more sense. And add the scene of Kalnaka getting killed by the stranger. You got to add that scene. You can't just walk in and see the Wookiee just one kill and one slash be dead sitting in his seat. You know,
I'll say something though. Actually, so this show in particular didn't really, not just because of the way it was told. Well, it was primarily because of the way it was told, but also because of how short it is.
Mm-hmm.
We never grew attached to any of the characters. Not really. I really liked Soul.
For Jackie. I did have a fondness for Jackie.
I really liked Soul. I saw Jackie have a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And what was his name? The guy who was pretty smug, but he seemed pretty interesting because he was
the guy
very
got killed in the game.
He was very outspoken, and I figured this guy, because of the way he's interacting with Osha, this guy might turn into something really important. And then boom, he's out.
But the moment they showed him with his shirt off, I wanted him to die. The moment they showed him with his shirt off, I was like, "You need to die. You need to die right now."
So Soul's death, yeah, they did him dirty, but Soul's death hit me not in a bad way, just like, oh, well, and the way he died made it so much more important. Yeah. So I applaud Steven, because I was thinking along those lines. I just wasn't super invested in the show to really think about predictions, and I'm really bad at predictions anyway. But when Steven said last episode, he's like, no, and especially when we saw Osha put on that helmet, and the way she approached the stranger approached her in a different way than he did to May. Yeah, you could sort of sense exactly what Steven said, and Steven was right on the nose. I think the Acolyte is referring to one of the girls will become an Acolyte. The Acolyte isn't talking about the stranger. It's not talking about just the concept of becoming an Acolyte in general. No, it's the Acolyte is a character. That character is Osha, not May. And we'll see what happens. Hell yeah. Osha, I do have beef with May all of a sudden just giving up and going, yeah, wipe my memory. I'm sorry.
And that's not
why are those your only options? Like, what is this? What's going on?
That's not the only time in the show she did it either. Like in episode 4, when her and I can never say the guy's name right, Kimir or whatever, Kimir, well, I think was his name, the Sith guy.
Yeah, with a Q. Yeah.
When they're walking through the woods and she just decides she's be like, she has this epiphany. I'm going to turn myself into the Jedi. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And then she just runs off. And in the very next episode, Jackie is trying to arrest her and she's fighting her, trying to get out of the restraints. Like, no, you're not taking me. Like, where did that come from all of a sudden? Like, out of nowhere? Was it because her and her sister were getting closer to each other physically?
Teenagers.
Or what? Yeah, what was it? Like, she just...
I don't mean to say that, but yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Completely. And then, but Osha, yeah, so more to the point of Osha killing Soul brutally, and her crossing that threshold.
Nick
was
does
big.
not like the fact that Soul died.
No,
I don't either. No, I'm just saying. I'm just playing with. I'm playing with the hand I'm dealt.
He had to die because in order for them to say, "Hey, everybody that was alive during that
Sith," yeah.
You know what I'd like to see?
Not okay with.
I'd like to see a season without Jedi at all.
What I am not okay with was how because as I mentioned before, Soul wasn't the one that wanted to take Osha and May back to Coruscant. Yeah. That was Jedi Master. That was Padawan.
That was Padawan. Yeah.
That was Padawan Toman and his fake ass beard. He was going to listen to Indara and say, he was going to listen to Indara and say, okay, fine, we're not going to take him. And then when, they have Osha on the thing and they're like, we got to tell the council. And Indara's the one that's like, no, we're not, because Osha literally lost everything, and we're not going to take her away. So, and at the end of the episode, he turns around and is like, no, I was the one that did it all. I was the one that, I'm like, no. And yes, Soul killed Osha and May's mother. But if you watch episode 7, I had to think about it for a minute. Watch the 7th episode. Soul was looking at what was happening, and Tobin or Kalnaka, one of the two was being controlled by them. So he was like, if I don't stop this, they're going to die. So I have to take action. So I do not blame Soul for so yeah, he killed their mother.
Yeah, no. I mean, he doesn't even understand what exactly this mother is doing. Yeah,
everything else that happened, that there's, everybody in our chat was saying Soul did. He didn't do. He was a bystander, more or less. And he was a frustrated bystander, which is, now that you think about it.
Can I ask you guys a question about episode 7?
When you go into the first episode and he's training the younglings, you can tell he's kind of just like regulated to his life. And it's like, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And then
I want to ask you, Nick, something, and Brian, maybe you guys have an explanation for this. Why did, when Soul kill the mother, why did all of a sudden the rest of the cult just die?
Because Star Wars loves phantom menacing everything. Loves it. I feel like I don't know. I think that I don't know. I just like to think that maybe they were all connected in the Force through those Force threads they were.
Yeah, that's the only explanation, right? I mean, is there another explanation?
The power of many, like that whole thing.
That was really creepy, by the way.
Please
and that
don't
sounded
sing
really.
That song.
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah. No, just the phrase. Forget the song. Just the phrase. That was pretty creepy.
It's the same thing that happened with the battle droids in episode 1. Why can't we have symmetry on that? Which is not a funny trivia fact. Not to derail for a second, but that's why all the droids were just complete morons in episodes 2 and 3 and with Clone Wars, is because of that massive design flaw of them all being controlled by one central unit. They were all given individual processing units after that. That's why they all develop personalities, and they're like,
what's the name of that? What's the name of that? The huge dome in Vegas, the sphere, the dome.
Yeah,
they should get the computer that runs that into the Battlestar droid. There you go.
I do want to ask you guys this too, because there's something else that was kind of big in this show that I want to get your guys' take on also. The Kyber crystal bleeding that we finally got to see for the first time in live action. Anyway, we saw it in Jedi Survivor. We've seen it, in the comics and stuff, but this is the first time we've seen it in live action.
So fast too.
It was quick, and I feel like it was a little too fast. I
felt like the crystal itself, but then the blade, that was pretty cool.
And I liked how they did it with the blade. But the thing, I see everybody asking, well, then why didn't Anakin's lightsaber turn red when he turned to the dark side? Because she was making physical contact. She was making physical contact to that crystal when she was feeling that anger and that hate, and that's why it started. And as soon as you start to see that, as soon as the lightsaber, like when she threw it away and you see it land and it focused in really, like a really weird close up on the emitter of the lightsaber, and you see the Kyber crystal sticking out, I was like, okay, what's going on with that? And then when she picked up the saber and when you see that red starting to appear in the saber, I was like, oh man, she's bleeding this thing. And it's the first time we've seen one bled. I mean, it's the second time we've ever seen one bled, but it's the first time we've seen one bled inside the lightsaber. And Jedi Survivor, that High Republic Jedi pulls his crystal out and bleeds it and then puts it back into a saber. And but I thought it was cool the way they did the bleeding of the lightsaber inside the crystal.
Very cool.
Love how the blade was like.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. Yeah, because I did read the Vader comics when he was able to, and so I was like, hey, that's, and I enjoy it. Yeah. So I like I said, and that's where I will give credit where credit is due to Star Wars, and then the canon that we have, which will lead into. Is they are making these connections.
Yeah.
And then, and if you want to go further in depth, you can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just enjoy the story.
And the other thing I like about the bleeding thing is that's how Ahsoka got her white lightsabers, because there's a cure for the bleeding of a lightsaber. It's to purify it, and that's why she got the white sabers when she in the Ahsoka novel, which now basically all of it was told in Tales of the Jedi. Now the bulk of it, Tales of the Jedi, her whole story after episode 3, after Order 66 on the planet where I remember the name of the planet, but she's on that farming planet when she was going by the name Ashla. That was basically a very abridged version of the original Ahsoka novel. But in that novel, this Inquisitor comes and she takes both of his crystals and purifies them of all of the anger and the hate and everything like that. And that's where she gets the white blades, which I thought was cool too. But to see it though, it was really cool. And they're going to come out with some Hasbro toy of a lightsaber now that will flicker and change
that
color.
you can flicker, yeah.
That you can bleed your crystal, and you know what I mean? Like,
I was just thinking that's going to be the lightsaber that you bring. I'm going to buy it and have it shipped over to you. When you come visit me in Egypt, that's the one you're bringing to me.
I'm actually, so not to get off track, but I'm finally going to get my first tattoo. I don't have any tattoos. I'm a huge needle phobe, but I'm finally going to get my first tattoo. I finally decided what it is.
Damn, I dig it.
Kirsty is designing it for me right now. It's going to be a Star Wars tat. See, I'm terrified to get one, but it's going to be right here it's going to be on the inside of my arm, but it's going to be Kyle Katarn's lightsaber from Jedi Outcast. And it's going to be separated out. Like it's almost like use the Force to like expand it, to like a cross section of it. And it's going to have a giant, like really pretty blue crystal in the middle of it. And it's going to have the World Between Worlds circles behind it.
That's amazing. World Between Worlds.
And I know Kyle Katarn's not canon, but that's my favorite lightsaber of all time. I love that saber. But anyway.
Fantastic.
Sounds awesome. And Kirsty's designing it for me actually as we speak, probably. But anyway, getting off. I got off topic, but I didn't mean to. But overall, I thought the show was okay. Nick, I think I messaged you and I was like, based off of those, I liked half the show. I liked half the season. I liked half of it. I'm with you. I liked half of it. I think had it been told chronologically, I would have liked a lot more of it. I think it would have made a lot more sense. I think it would have been more enjoyable to watch. Because you could have watched 2 or 3 episodes and then all of a sudden pop up 16 years later. And you're like, okay, here we're jumping ahead now. You know what I mean? And then you meet everybody again. And it's like, okay, this is where everybody's at. We know what happened, but Osha and May don't know what happened. Like we're getting there. Right. So I think that was something that it didn't have going for it. But I think based off of just those last few episodes, they showed that they can make a really good series with, like you said, Nick, all the ingredients are there. It's just you have to put it together right. And I think for those last few episodes, they really did. I think they cooked with it and they showed that they can do it. Now do it. It took them 5 episodes to realize do or do not, there is no try. And then they got into episode 6 and they did, And so I'll go ahead and say it. I would not mind if they did another season. Plagueis and Yoda have to be almost front and center. They can never meet, just like Anakin and Obi-Wan. Anakin and General Grievous never met until episode 3. That was something they had to adhere to in Clone Wars. Anakin and Grievous could never come face to face in that series because they met for the first time in episode 3. When Anakin's like, you're shorter than I expected, and so you can do it. You can have a show that focuses on Plagueis and has Yoda as one of the main characters in it, and they not interact. You can do this without breaking canon. They proved it. So overall, I think it was I think it was a mediocre show, but I think it.
Let me ask you a couple of questions here. For one, regarding Yoda, and then another one regarding the show. I think Yoda would be better served, and give me your opinions on this.
Sure.
I think the show, would be better served if Yoda, depending on the story that they decide to tell, but Yoda wouldn't be too front and center. He would just be there to help the audiences find something that is relatable, so that they can keep him watching because he is a favorite for good reason.
Absolutely,
he's one of my favorites. But then he wouldn't necessarily be that effective in the show. He'd just show sort of the downfall of the Jedi or the changing mindsets within the Jedi. And this is how the High Republic shifts towards the form of structure that we see in episode 1. And this is how we started getting there, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I think so. Maybe. I mean, I'm not necessarily looking for him to be a front runner for this kind of show. I'm hoping that Plagueis and darker, sinister characters, darker stories would be. And this leads me on to the second question. In your experience reading and watching this kind of show and reading books of this sort of story, whether you want to classify it as something or not, I don't want to keep going back to calling this young adult or looking at characters that are younger and then their development and this backstory. If half of the show is good and half of it is bad, if the half that's not necessarily good or bad, half of it is the bad story, and it's not necessarily what we want to see again, Is that normal? Like, are we also going to get a season 2 if we get the same type of director, the same type of writer? Oh, no, you'll always have these sort of episodes that just sort of keep showing you the backstory of this character. They're not necessarily going to build up on Osha. You might have Osha die in season 2. You might have Osha whatever. That's not that important. Or, no. Since they showed you her backstory in season 1, then you know that she's going to be really important going forward. Mm-hmm. So first question, Yoda. Second question about Osha, because if half of the show was bad, then someone who liked the show would argue, no, this was extremely important so that you could get invested in these characters, understand what's going on and why this happened.
This is why
you can get affected by the story. Absolutely.
No, I get it. The Yoda thing, I think he needs to be there.
Have a more primary role than the one I'm saying.
He needs to be there, but I don't think he needs to be a center point in the season. Legis, I feel like, would need to have some speaking lines in a season 2. Because like you said earlier, we don't know if he's actually Khmer's master. We don't know if he's just like following them around and just like followed them to this unknown planet that looks a hell of a lot like Octu. We don't know. We don't know what the relationship there is. So he would have to have a larger role.
That looks like is Octu the planet that
Luke was on? Yeah, that Luke was on in the Last Jedi.
So it's not Octu.
Because everybody was like, "Is that Octu?" Because in the I think the showrunners came out.
We're not sure which planet that's on.
No, it says unknown planet when it pops up for that. It said unknown.
Yeah, and we don't know which planet it is.
Right. But the thing is, like with a show like this, if you're doing an entire season, like if you don't know if you're getting a season 2, right? Because she made the season not knowing if she was going to get a season 2, but she made it as though she was. Is the thing. The original Star Wars movie was made as though it was a single film, that there would never be a sequel, that there never be a prequel. It was just the first Star Wars movie has a beginning, middle, and end, cut and dry. That could be the end of the story. That's it. Luckily, we got Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and we kept on going. But had he not made any more movies after that, it could have been cut and dry. Like Nick said, this season could have been a cut and dry, but it was also made with the idea, with the Yoda cameo at the end, with Plagueis popping up for zero reason if there is no season 2. She made this as though there's going to be a season 2. And so I don't know, like, is that really the way if you don't know for a fact you're getting a season 2, do you make it as though you're going to get a season 2? I don't know if that's a good idea. Because then we get all these unanswered questions with these cliffhangers with like Yoda and Plagueis. And if they come out tomorrow, like there's not going to be a season 2 of ACOLYTE, we're going to be like, what the hell? Like,
I'll be honest, I'll be very pissed, because then what the hell was this all about? Because like you can't just reel me in or try to reel me in and people that like the show really like the show. And that's very cool to see. I'm very happy for them. Like, yes, give people stuff to look forward to. And the fact that some people really look forward to this, that makes me really happy with Star Wars. And I know, I mean, I want to stop having this general conversation, and I love watching other Star Wars, whether it's YouTubers, whether it's people reacting. I love watching them all. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I just want to stop personally doing this thing where I start judging Lucasfilm or Star Wars we'll talk about this later.
We can, yeah. Nick, did you got anything you want to add?
So, in regards to if there's a season 2, Yoda, in a lot of ways, just needs to be kind of what he was in the prequels. He's a quasi-main character, but he's not the main character. He's there, as Usef said, to bring the audience in.
Is what Rey needs to be in episode 10.
That's
a conversation for another time.
Now we're going somewhere else.
Pretend like I want to see Rey a lot more anyway.
You guys didn't hear me say anything.
In regards,
I did not say that.
In regards to, again, Plagueis, I know it was, everybody knows it was, everybody that is a passionate Star Wars fan know that was Darth Plagueis. Okay, I got that. Yes. Would it suck for those that want a season 2 not to get a season 2? Yes, it would. Guess what? As we talked about before the show began, I am a passionate Halo series fan. I like the first season. I like the second season. I love the second season, and they left it at a cliffhanger. And then I find out it got canceled today. So,
you know how it feels for the people who like the Acolyte then.
Yeah. And so I just think, we can discuss this more in the questions stuff, because we can go on, and this could be a 4-hour podcast.
It could be, yeah. We're already an hour and a half in. So, guys, let us know below, what did you think of the Acolyte as an entire series? Now that the whole thing is out, do you kind of view it differently, or did all your questions get answered? Do you still have questions? Do you want a season 2? Sound off below. Keep it civil. No arguing. We're going to be policing the comments when we talk about something as controversial as the Acolyte, I guess you could say. So we're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we're going to get into some mailbag questions. We'll be right back.
The fearsome Nile continued to spread chaos inside the occlusion zone, aided by mysterious creatures called the Nameless that feed on the Force itself. When the people of an embattled world plead for help with the Nihil threat, a team of both Republic Defense Coalition members and Jedi, including Ram Jamorum, is sent to their aid. The team soon discovers that their ship contains 4 stowaways, Jedi younglings Kildo, Tep, and Jamil, and Zenny Greylark, a senator's daughter determined to find her sister. When a distress call comes in from a nearby planet, Jedi Master Adi Lee Caro agrees to take stowaways to investigate. There they will encounter a young Hutt on a mission, a stranger with mysterious motives, and the creatures they fear the most. Available wherever books are sold on August 27th.
It's been over a year since the fall of the Starlight Beacon space station, and both heroes and villains alike must face the consequences of their decisions. When Jedi Knight Reith and Padawan Amado Azazo are sent on a mission to test their theories about the Nameless, they'll come face to face with the terrifying creatures once thought to be myth, and learn the true meaning of fear. Fear that fallen Jedi Aslan Rel advised them to embrace if they have any hope of defeating the monsters. Available wherever books are sold on September 24th.
This is John Jackson Miller, and you're listening to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. May the Force be with you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. We are going to be getting into some mailbag questions. How do you guys get a question on the Star Wars Canon Podcast? You can email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. We go through each week, pick out a couple, and this week I've got 2. One of them is something that it's going to be hard to not be, I don't know. We'll just get into it. You guys will see what I'm talking about here in a minute. We were talking about it in the group chat when I sent these guys the questions for the night. Like I said, how do you guys get a question on? It's starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. And let's get into it, shall we, guys? First question this week comes from Stacy Thomas. And Stacy writes in and says, "Hello there, Star Wars Canon Podcast crew. It's great to see you posting content again. What a time to be a Star Wars fan. I know Brian is not a huge fan of Jar Jar Binks. Ugh. Have we ever gotten a confirmation? Oh God, it's just hard to read it. Have we ever got a confirmation on if he was on Alderaan when it exploded? I think that would make the most sense and a really good way to keep from ever having to use him again. Thanks for taking my question and keep on doing what you're doing." Thanks for sending in the question, Stacy. It's no secret. I'm not a Jar Jar fan. I never have been. I never will be. I can't. It's nothing against Ahmed Best. It's nothing against him at all. I have no ill will toward that man whatsoever. He's a human being. He was doing what he was told to do.
He's a human being.
He made an awesome Kelleran Beck. He's a great guy. I have nothing against him. I swear there's nothing. I have no ill will towards him. But I cannot stand that bumbling idiot Gungan. I cannot stand him at all. No, he was not on Alderaan, sadly, when the Death Star decided to barbecue it.
Sadly.
Have you guys read the Aftermath trilogy? Have either of you guys read the Aftermath?
No, not
No.
yet. It's on my list
No.
after The Earth Courageous and a couple of other books.
So-
Non-Star Wars related, if I'm honest. Anyway.
So the Aftermath trilogy is a trilogy of novels that picks up the moment Return of the Jedi is ending and goes all the way up to and through the Battle of Jakku. So the whole trilogy takes place over the course of about a year. It follows
So it's
Norway.
literally the aftermath of the fall of the
Literally,
Empire,
yeah.
or the death of the Emperor. per se,
And it's
Vader.
really cool to read too, because like the opening part of it, the opening like chapter, the prologue, I guess, if you would, of the first book is Coruscant. And it's everybody cheering like you see at the end of Return of the Jedi. They're
At
all
the end of
cheering
it,
and
yeah.
everything. And what you don't see is this book keeps going past when the camera cuts back to Endor. And TIE fighters come in and start shooting people because they're celebrating that the Emperor is dead, right? Because they're trying to put out this propaganda that the Emperor's still alive and it's just rebel misinformation and all this crap. But and if you look at Return of the Jedi, I love this about Return of the Jedi. In that scene, if you look down in the bottom corner, as the camera's panning across, you can see them like ripping a stormtrooper apart. Like they're waylaying a stormtrooper and you can see him like pulling at him and stuff. And
you get the Wilhelm yell.
So great. Yeah, it's so awesome. But you just see him and he's so helpless and he's just getting waylaid. It's awesome. But anyway, this trilogy of books, it's a really great trilogy of books. Definitely go check that trilogy out if you haven't read them before. But all three books have what they call interlude chapters in them. And these interludes just kind of it's just a quick chapter that cuts somewhere else in the galaxy to something else going on that's being affected by the war between the remnants of the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. And one of those chapters, I don't remember which book it is, 1, 2, or 3, but there is a chapter in one of those books that takes place on Naboo. And this chapter follows a street clown Gungan that is just entertaining orphans and basically performing for scraps of food. And and I don't think they ever call him by name, but they heavily insinuate that it's Jar Jar. And to me, that's still not a good enough fate for this guy. I can't come up with something that is good enough that he deserves. Like, it's all his fault. Everything is his fault. Everything. And so I just I can't. He ends up being a street clown performing for scraps on the boat. He's making friends with orphans because nobody else wants to talk to him. Rightfully so. Screw that guy. Is this a good enough ending for him, guys? Like, is this the fate he deserves? Which it is. If you guys disagree, you're wrong. Did Jar Jar deserve this? What do you think?
Have you guys seen the Hellboy,
Yes.
first one? So that was the movie. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
So he there was a bit in there where they're talking about Rasputin and how he died. He was at the end of the Russian the Bolshevik Revolution, I think, or whatever it was that they were quoting in there. Rasputin was stabbed, clubbed, shot a dozen other times. I don't know, whatever happened to him, and then finally drowned. You know, it was like a series of different murders.
Well, they did it with Ghostbusters also. They did it with Vigo when they were talking about how Vigo died, and they're like, "Oh, he was quartered, stabbed, pulled apart." You know, like it was like.
Listen, I don't understand. I don't understand where all this hatred comes from, but
from deep down, Usef. It's from deep down.
I feel like this Virgin Mary right here. I feel like you wanna drink this, and you want me to ask you, what are you drinking? And you'd be like, this is the blood of Jar Jar Binks.
It's
right
Jar Jar's blood. Will I be able to drink that and be happy about it? I can't stand that guy.
So we all know, and there are some fairly substantial fan theories out there, that the real Dark Lord of the Sith was actually Jar Jar Binks.
I hate you so much, Nick, for bringing that
and
up.
he still is.
I'm about to boot you from this freaking recording.
Because we're finding out in the Lego saga that he is.
Yeah.
So
Misa gonna hurt you, Sa. I couldn't believe that crap.
I was
God.
When the prequels came out, I was 17. So, and I saw Phantom Menace opening day, And I absolutely enjoyed Jar Jar Binks. I thought it was a stitch. I thought it was a riot. I got what George Lucas was trying to do. It wasn't until about a year or two later where all of a sudden, everybody's like, "What the hell do you mean you like Jar Jar Binks?" Or what the hell do you mean?
Well, wait, then explain that to me. Explain that to me. I'm not super against Jar Jar, but I want you to explain that to me. Like, what was the point? Like, when I first saw Phantom Menace, I thought it was like the silly comic relief.
That's exactly what he was supposed to be.
Oh yeah, well, okay then. Okay.
So that's exactly what he was supposed to be. And what has George Lucas said Star Wars is supposed to be?
Kids.
It is supposed to
family,
be
kids.
It's supposed to be a generational story for kids. But it
was the 90s. If you didn't have a goofy character, you didn't do TV right.
And excuse me when it may rub some people the wrong way. It was a generational story for kids between the ages of 8 and 13 to 14. But specifically,
it's funny, Nick. That's the exact age group I was in when episode 1. Even then, I was like, "What the hell?"
Hold on. It's specifically boys. And what do boys like to talk about?
Lightsabers,
fart jokes, everything, doing silly, stupid stuff. He was a character of an 8 to 14-year-old boy, bar none. I saw him. I was like, yeah, I liked it.
You know how, like, if you want to introduce the goofy stuff, you could do it over the course of a story. I think he was like, no, there aren't going to be multiple funny characters. It's going to be one. We're going to have 100% concentration, 100% intensity. Put it all into this one character, and then have the rest of the characters be very serious.
CGI poop. Yeah,
because originally in the original movie, which then turned out to be the original trilogy, the comedic backstory relief was C-3PO and R2-D2.
Mm-hmm.
So
no fart jokes, no stepping in poop. No,
I saw a comment somewhere. Somebody saying Gungans are just evolved fish bait.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Did you guys ever watch the movie Fanboys?
Yes.
No.
You've never seen? Okay, so
with Kristen Bell.
Yes, yeah. So Fanboys came out in like the early 2000s. This movie is great. This is a Star Wars fans movie. It is it's called Fanboys. It's about this group of kids in 1998. They're counting down for Star Wars Episode 1 to be coming out. That's they're Star Wars nuts. They're basically us. They cannot wait. They're going to Halloween parties dressed up as Darth Vader and stormtroopers, and they really want to see Episode 1, right? And they come to find out that one of their friends has got cancer and he's not going to live long enough to see the movie. And so they decide they're going to drive across country to Skywalker Ranch to try to steal a director's copy of Episode 1 so that he can watch it before he dies. That's the whole movie. And it's just so many freaking shenanigans take place during this movie. It's ridiculous. They stop in Iowa, the birthplace of Captain Kirk, and get into a fight with a bunch of Trekkies. Like, it's insane. It's a great movie.
Then they have William Shatner.
William Shatner in it. Yeah, giving them the layout for Skywalker Ranch, and they're like, William Shatner, I can get anything. Like, it's all, but the movie is hilarious. It's a great movie. It's got Kristen Bell in it. It's got Seth Rogen in it. He plays 2 separate characters in it. But I'm telling you that, Seth Rogen's in it. He played the pimp in Vegas, and he played the Trekkie that was like their captain, like in charge of their like posse in Iowa. And so he played both characters. But the pimp, when he's playing the pimp, there's a part where he's like talking to one of the nerdy guys because he had been like talking to one of his escorts all night. And he's like, "You owe me all this money." And he's just like, and they realize they're both Star Wars fans. And so Seth Rogen's character's got like Star Wars tats on both arms. He's like, "Oh yeah, you like that? I got the Empire on this side. Duh. On this side, he's like, "I got the Rebels on this side." He's like, "And check this out." And he turns around and pulls his shirt up. And on his back is his whole back is one large tattoo of Jar Jar Binks. And he's like, "This guy's going to be the shit. You just watch and see. Everybody's going to love this guy." You guys, if you haven't watched Fanboys, as a Star Wars fan, I feel like it is your job to go watch Fanboys. I love that movie.
It's a great movie.
It's great.
This is what I will say. Because honestly, out of the entire prequels, it goes Revenge of the Sith, The Phantom Menace, and then Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
And for so many people shit on The Phantom Menace. And they're like, oh, if we just take out you can tell the entire Star Wars tale without The Phantom Menace. And I've literally gotten into arguments, huge debates with people about why you cannot. So, look.
Anyway,
if I ever win a bet against you, Brian, it's probably gonna be me. I'm gonna get a tattoo. I'm gonna get you to tattoo something on you. It's not gonna be Jar Jar Binks himself.
Okay.
I think you died before that. But I'm probably gonna
no Jar Jar.
I'm probably gonna get the tattoo artist to write just really small fine print under your next tattoo to be like Misa or something just like.
But anyway,
dude, I can't even
I think maybe I'll get a small tattoo somewhere where just be like Misa gonna get Brian Miller to love me or something like that.
So point being is Jar Jar Binks gets too much hate, in my opinion. What was it too much of a caricature of an 8 to 14-year-old boy and then maybe a specific ethnic group? Probably. Okay. But guess what? It's Star Wars. And when Phantom Menace came out, I saw that movie 5 times in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely love that movie. And I will die on that hill. Because we got some of the, it is a great film. And I don't care what people say.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It features my favorite piece of lore ever. That bit there with Dave Filoni just sitting there explaining the point behind the Duel of the Fates and its position there. If you want if I watch it back as a movie, sometimes it's super boring and sometimes I'm more into it than any other movie I've ever seen. Like, it's that kind of thing to me. I just love it so much that it's something for everyone in that one movie. It's such a great, and this is the ultimate sort of, you have 4, 5, 6, and you have the backstory. So you have the backstory starts with episode 1. It's the first real Star Wars we've seen in 30 odd years or whatever. More than, how long was it? Since 80.
83 to 99.
83. Sorry, I was going to say 73. 83 to 99. Yeah, there you go. 16 years. And then that was fantastic.
When I was a kid, when it came out, I was like, God, that was so long ago. But now 16 years ago, I was like, shit, I was in my 20s and 16 years ago. I was like, oh my God.
How long has it been since episode 7 came out?
7 was in 15. So 9 years.
10 years.
It's going to be 10 years next year. My God. It's going to be 10 years since Han Solo died. Oh, shit.
In fact, Thanksgiving of this year will be 10 years since we got the first teaser trailer.
Yeah.
So,
and I remember losing my collective crap over that trailer.
Same.
So great. So that, I hope that answers your question, Stacy. Jar Jar ended up being a street clown. He was basically Ronald McDonald minus the hamburgers. And he just got to perform for scraps of food. So if that fate isn't good enough for you, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'll take it. I would have rather him been on, I would have rather him been on Alderaan, but that's just me. Whatever. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks for sending it in, Stacy. We do appreciate it. And the second question, this is going to be the one that I think we're going to have a hell of a discussion here for a little while. Rex Kemper has emailed in. Rex is a new listener. Rex decided to email us, and
welcome, Rex.
He said, everything we're about to say, welcome. Welcome to our show.
Hello,
I mean that. I really do mean that. Rex Kemper writes in and says, I came across your podcast on Spotify this afternoon, and I thought I'd give it a listen. I want to say that the only true canon is what Disney wiped out in 2013. Even George Lucas considered all of the books and comics canon to his universe. That's why he always made sure to keep what he did in the films in line with what happened in the novels. This new canon is so full of inconsistencies and just horrible storytelling. I have hated every single film and novel and comic and TV series that Disney has put out so far. None of it lives up to what came before. Who does Disney think they are just to wipe away all the stories we grew up with? At least in the EU, Luke Skywalker was the same Luke Skywalker we knew and loved from the classic films, and not some grumpy hermit. Wow, I think he's taking shots at you, Nick. Some grumpy hermit that wanted the Jedi to end. Absolutely stupid. I will say this, though. You and your podcast hosts do go out of the way to make sure you respect differing opinions, which is a true breath of fresh air for a content creator. I doubt you'll take my question for the show, but it's worth a shot to send it in to hear you defend the Disneyverse. This is us taking your question, Rex. And first off, I want to start with the positive stuff. The last part of your email. Thank you. Because we do try to go out of our way to make sure we respect everybody's opinions differently. You guys,
100%.
You've seen it on just this episode alone. We disagree on stuff, but we do so, with a spirit of camaraderie, and we're fellow Star Wars fans. Like Nick loves Jar Jar Binks. I don't know what's wrong with Nick, but I don't attack him physically or mentally or emotionally.
Or emotionally. I
don't attack him.
I understood what Jar Jar Binks was trying to be.
So
continue.
So anyway, I wanted to thank you for that first, because it is nice to actually hear, that from somebody who has a differing opinion from us, and for somebody who's not a fan of what we base our podcast around. We still appreciate the kind words. I want to break this email down because it's a heck of an email, and there's several things here to unpack, and there's several things to talk about. And so I think we just need to kind of go through it one bit at a time to make sure we cover everything. And Rex, I want to be as respectful as I can towards you and your opinions. I really do. So let's get into this. First off, the first thing you bring up is I want to say that the only true canon is what Disney wiped out in 2013. Even George Lucas considered all the books and comics canon to his universe. That's why he always made sure to keep what he did in the films in line with what happened in the novels. That is simply, it's not true. George Lucas he was interviewed in a magazine years ago called Starlog, and this is a quote that I know a lot of people go to, and Legends lovers hate this quote. They try to say that it was taken out of context, that it was interpreted wrongly, but this is what George Lucas's quote is when asked about the EU stuff, the expanded universe stuff. This is well before Disney ever bought Star Wars, before they bought Lucasfilm. This was well before any of that. George Lucas's quote reads this: I don't read that stuff. I haven't read any of the novels. I don't know anything about that world. That's a different world than my world. But I do try to keep it consistent. The way I do it now is they have a Star Wars encyclopedia. So if I come up with a name or something else, I look it up and see if it has already been used. When I said other people could make their own Star Wars stories, we decided that, like Star Trek, we would have two universes, my universe and then this other one. They try to make their universe as consistent with mine as possible, but obviously they get enthusiastic and want to go off in other directions. That is directly from George Lucas. That is from the maker himself.
Wow.
Right? And the thing that people try to say, well, he didn't say the word canon specifically. No, but he did say that universe is different from my universe. That is not mine. And the next thing, and the next line of your email also goes along with this also. It says, I forget where it was. This new canon is so full of inconsistencies and just horrible storytelling. Even the EU had a lot of story inconsistencies.
They did.
The Clone Wars with the Heir to the Empire trilogy, which a lot of people who read the Legend stuff still herald as the greatest trilogy of novels ever, especially for the EU, because it had Thrawn in it and it was everything like that. That whole set of novels had an entirely different kind of Clone Wars than what we ended up seeing in the movies. George Lucas didn't keep his movies to what that book put out for what the Clone Wars was. He made his own version of the Clone Wars that had nothing to do with what happened in those books, and those books even say on the back cover, the official continuation of the Star Wars saga. Just because it says it on it doesn't mean it is, And so there's several inconsistencies across EU also. I know there are characters that if you read the EU chronologically, there are characters that die in book A, and then in book like J, they're back again. Like nothing ever happened. Like their death just got completely retconned. And so he just because he tried his best to make sure that it hadn't been done before doesn't mean he considered all of it canon. It's kind of what Disney is doing now with Legends. They cherry pick. They try to see, if a character that was already in Legends makes sense to bring into canon. And they did it with Thrawn. Thrawn's a great example of that. They needed a really smart Imperial officer, and they were like, we have a guy that we can use. It's Thrawn. And they brought him in and made their own version of him. That's what George Lucas essentially did to the EU. It's the same thing Disney's doing to canon. Guys, am I wrong on that so far? Before I go any further?
So absolutely not. In fact, there was another article, and this was about, I think it was right after Disney wiped what, and I wiped for me, because I love the EU despite all its inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
But George Lucas even said he did not consider the books canon. In fact, there were it
was his movies and the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
That's it. So and the reason the Clone Wars he considered canon is because he worked directly on it. And the person that everybody is heralding as should take over Dave Filoni, he worked directly under George Lucas, which then brings us back to the whole comment that Usef said a little bit ago about the roundtable discussion that they had in The Mandalorian and everything. And that's, that to me, is, essentially awesome and everything. So, and when people say, "Oh, Disney ruined Star Wars," or guess not, or who does I don't. Yeah. So Rex, you said, who does Disney think they are?
Disney think they are.
Wipe away all the stories we grew up with. Well, first off, Disney heard George Lucas was trying to make 7, 8, and 9, but he wasn't going to direct them because of all the shit that, hey, guess what? Star Wars fans gave him for 1, 2, and 3. So Disney was like, hey, we have $4.3 billion. We'll make the movie.
You want to trade pink slips?
And he was like, sure. So that's who Disney thinks they are. And for everybody else, and Rex, I don't know if you're one of them that says, oh, they should just reboot the can. They're not going to do that. Okay. I don't know if they were to sell, like if Disney were tomorrow, going to say, we're selling Star Wars. They could easily sell the entire IP for probably close to $500 million, for $500 billion.
And Disney, I think, is petty enough. They would put in a contract to whoever bought it. You cannot change anything that came before, the same way George Lucas did with his films and with his show. I think they would be like, oh, you want all of it? You're all of our canon novels, everything. You're taking it all. You got to keep it the way it is. And I can see Disney being petty enough to do that, to make sure that theirs stayed in there.
And when you say I hated every single film, novel, comic,
I hate that.
So Rex, I seriously have to ask you a question. TV series. We've said it before. The only thing George Lucas considered canon was the Clone Wars. So do you love everything George Lucas did for the Clone Wars up until he sold Star Wars? And then after that, you don't consider any of that canon? I'm not trying to cherry pick, but but the other thing too is I have my own grievances with Star Wars right now. Mm-hmm. I've made that very abundantly clear. But I will say this on a hill, and I will die on this fucking hill. Rogue One, to me, is the single greatest Star Wars story we have gotten since the original trilogy, bar none. And I will die on that hill. I'm not talking about shows. I'm talking single story shot telling. Rogue One. Prove me wrong.
Here's where I'm at with it, Nick, because I'm looking at it at a different point of view, because I'm gonna bring up a graphic on here of how many Star Wars novels there really are and how many there have been since 2000. Well, actually, the novel started in 2014. It was when A New Dawn came out. There are so many novels. You said you've hated every single film and novel and comic and TV series that Disney has put out so far. First off, there's 1,000 issues of Star Wars comics that have come out since 2015. There's 120 novels, I think, something along those lines, 120 different novels that have come out since 2014. And for you to say that you have hated every single one of them means that you have sat down and devoted 12 hours a book to 120 different books. You've devoted 1,440 hours to reading Star Wars books that you don't like. You have devoted, you've gone to see every single Star Wars movie that they've come out with. You've read every single one of the 1,000 issues that they've come out with. And better yet, you've spent money on these things. You've spent, there's 120 books at $20 a pop. You know, I mean,
even if he hasn't read the books or the comics, even if you've just watched the movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Why are you wasting your time and your
Rex,
money?
brother, I'm gonna take I don't mean to take a shot at anybody here, but I'm gonna take a different standpoint where I just ask you. So, I'm here personally, and I have beef with so many different types of things, and Star Wars is getting to that point where I'm starting to there's a term here that we say it locally. It doesn't necessarily translate the best into English. It's basically sort of, I'm going to start turning away, or I'm going to start pulling away, because if I'm not getting maximum enjoyment from being this deep into everything Star Wars anymore. That's fine, because previously I had just had one story, the core, what I consider the core, and then I wanted to get as much around that as I could. That's how I wanted to get more novels. I wanted to get more books, and I started listening to this podcast from before episode 7 came out, and I started, digging in, and we became friends, started talking about it more and looking at this with a different angle of, okay, what do I want to see from Star Wars? So I actually want to ask you to reply back to us saying what you'd rather see from what's going on. If you just want to see what the old stuff, fine, you're never going to get that again. We all know that.
You're never going to be
what
surprised.
do you want to see? Yeah, so because the thing is that you're never going to see what was canceled. I want to see, so my favorite thing, I know what it is, it's the Force. And then what I really want to see within the Force is the dark side. I want to see that. I'm probably not going to get what I want to see. It turns out that what I want to see might not, I don't necessarily want blood and gore and stuff. And I'm going to take another episode where I'm going to ask Brian to, okay, just give me like half an hour. I'm going to pre-record this stuff and insert it in there. And I want to get my message really across. But this is what I want to see from Star Wars, and I'm going to try to explain it. Because if you don't see anything that you want from Star Wars, from all of the media that you've watched from Star Wars, you've spent hours, you've spent money on this, then honestly, if you hate everything and it's all inconsistent, then why are you watching?
Yeah, why are you spending
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be annoying, and please enjoy it because you love it. By all means, do it. I'm not trying to take a shot at you. Do it. Enjoy it. Let's try to see what we love. What is it that you love? You know what I mean? And be as negative as you want. Do it, man. Like, do whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Absolutely. This is the place, exactly as you said. We want to be as open as we can to everybody's opinions. But what is it? If you keep, and that's my question to anybody who tells me, yeah, this isn't what I want to see. Okay, then what did you want to see? It's kind of like, I know this isn't really the space for this, but if I wanted to talk about work and I get all these negative people, and I'm in a country with an unbelievably bad economy, and things are going bad and political, and you guys don't need to know more than, I'm living in the Middle East, I'm living in Egypt, so I'm going through shit right now. But the thing is that anybody who says and just keeps saying negative comments, okay, great. What should be done? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about why they did what they did? Whoever did what that, what would you say? Same thing for Star Wars, guys. Let's think about, honestly, what we want to see. So I've been on here for most of this episode saying, I want to see this, I want to see this, I want to see that, rather than bash ACOLYTE. And I love Star Wars. I love the concepts. I love so many of the characters. Not all of the characters, not even a quarter of the characters. More than half of them, I probably haven't even delved enough into them. And some of them, I was really upset. Like, I'm still gearing myself into the Thrawn trilogy, and I was like trying to make sure, is it Legends or not? Because last year when we were doing episodes and podcast episodes, I kept asking Brian again and again, okay, so what's Legends and what is it? Am I going to read? What am I going to? Because I don't want to read Legends. I don't want to read stuff that's retcon because I want to read stuff that's going to be continuing with the story. I've got work. I've got nieces and nephews. I've got, I was recently getting married and all this stuff. We all have a lot on our plate. So I just want to get to the good stuff. And I'm not getting the great stuff. So I'm not that great stuff to me. So I'm not sure what it is I want. But who are Disney? They are the owners of this thing. And I want to really, this whole concept of bashing on Disney era, Disney this, Disney that. Okay, Disney might as well rule the world. What are you going to change about it?
They own everything.
You're just going to say
everything.
Exactly. So what you're going to say, you're going to keep comparing it with Marvel, which I've done. You're going to, because episode 7, 8, 9 really let me down as a whole, as a trilogy. And I didn't like the inconsistencies of the storytelling, but I liked a lot of what was in there. And I know what I want to see going forward. I know, hopefully, we were talking about, Rey might not be that much of a front runner in episode 10. Personally, I want to see Rey rock in episode 10. That's personally me. That's just my opinion. Yeah, I don't. That's just my 2 cents. I'm perfectly. I understand where you're coming from. To a certain level, I may even agree with you. Like, understanding and agreeing are two very different things. Understanding where somebody's coming from and empathizing with you is fine. But I don't necessarily agree with you. But I want to know from you. And what about you guys? Like, I'm sure you guys think, because we talk about this all the time. I'm always saying what I'd rather see. Maybe that's too hopeful, but what do you think?
Here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm at. If you're spending all these thousands of dollars on stuff you don't like, you're fueling the machine because you're giving them your money, and it makes them think you like what you're getting because you just keep buying the product over and over and over again. So you're hurting your own cause by reading everything you hate. That's what's happening. There are things in canon that I don't like. There are books that I am not a fan of. There are people who adore the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. I cannot stand that trilogy. I think it was a horrible trilogy. I had to really swallow it down and just freaking read them because I wasn't a fan of them. It wasn't for me. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to read the next one or the next, novels that come out or watch the next show that's coming out. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'll give anything a shot. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you I don't like it. If I love it, I'll tell you I love it. If I don't tell you the things I don't like, then how are you going to believe me when I tell you the things I do like? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff in canon that is not good, but there was a lot of stuff in the EU that wasn't good either. You bring up Luke Skywalker and how he was just some grumpy hermit on an island in The Last Jedi. But the problem is with the EU, everybody put Luke Skywalker on this pedestal, right? Like, everybody loved Luke Skywalker because he was relatable. He lived on a farm. He wanted to get out and see the world. You know how relatable that is for a lot of young people. And that's relatable. Being a super powerful Messiah Jedi with a lightsaber is not relatable. Just all good character is not relatable. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't like Rey, because Rey is just completely incorruptible. That is boring to me. I want to see somebody who's actually struggling with that internal conflict instead of somebody who's just a Girl Scout, And so Luke having that dark streak because he is his father's son makes total sense. And having that dark streak at the end of Return of the Jedi, and with everything he went through in between episodes, 6 and 7, that would drive anybody to the point of where Luke ended up at. You know what I mean? And don't forget, in the EU, Luke Skywalker turned to the dark side. He was redeemed by Leia. He killed one of his students because they were possessed by the ghost of somebody else. He killed one of his own students, cut their head off. So that happened in the EU. Luke wasn't this all-powerful, all-good character, even in the EU. So when you come to where he was in Last Jedi, and I think it's hilarious, everybody craps on Last Jedi for what happened with Luke. It's not Rian Johnson who did that to Luke Skywalker. It was J.J. Abrams. Because in episode 7, they say what happened to Luke. Han Solo says he walked away from it all. He went away. We don't know where he is. That whole aspect of Luke was written in episode 7, not episode 8. So I don't know why everybody craps all over Rian Johnson for episode 8 for that. That was the plan for Luke. Like, between those two movies, that was the plan for Luke. And to me, That's way more relatable. As I get older and I have kids now and I'm dealing with my kids, yeah, there's been times I wanted to go light up a lightsaber and just hack one of them down with the young 1000. I wanted to. That happens. That's what happens when you're an adult and you have some shit-brained kid trying to tell you what, the way the world works. And so that Luke Skywalker, yeah, it's completely different than what we got in the EU, but I think it's more relatable and it's more realistic to Luke's character. And the other thing with Luke, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to you guys, because I told you I was going to go off. With Luke, everybody talks about how awesome Luke Skywalker was at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, and how that's the Luke Skywalker we wanted. That's my Luke Skywalker. They're doing it right. They're going to retcon what happened in episode 8 and blah, blah, blah. They're not going to retcon anything. Okay. If anything, that Luke Skywalker builds up and reinforces why we got the Luke Skywalker in episode 8 that we did. Because it's like the story of Icarus with the wax wings. The higher you fly, the further you have to fall.
The further you have to fall, the closer you are to the sun, so you're going to fall to your death.
Exactly.
It's too,
So,
and Luke flew too high. He went way too high, way too fast, and crashed and burned. And it's natural for that to happen. I would rather see that. To me, that is more compelling as a story and as character development than just seeing some all-powerful, incorruptible, unbeatable Luke Skywalker who in the EU became so powerful he didn't even need his lightsaber anymore. He basically became a god. Like, that's not interesting to me. That's not relatable. Am I crazy, guys? That's the last thing I have to say about it. You guys take it away. Go.
No, you're not crazy.
So as the grumpy Jedi, and as Rex said, he was a not some grumpy hermit that wanted the Jedi to end.
Yeah.
Rex.
I still say the Jedi had it coming.
Huh?
I still say the Jedi had it coming.
So Rex, and for everybody else listening, I'm just going to say this. Who were the 3 most influential male father figures or male figures in Luke Skywalker's life as he was growing up and into his early 20s? Because that's
Yoda, Obi-Wan.
And who else?
Owen?
Yes. And what all 3 were they? They were grumpy, old, and they were hermits.
And that's the thing. That's the other thing. That's the only example Luke ever had to follow was that, I messed up, so I'm going into exile.
Exactly.
Yoda did it. Obi-Wan did it. Obi-Wan even said in the Obi-Wan series, no, the Jedi have to end. Like, it's okay for him to say it, but not okay for Luke Skywalker to say it.
So the other thing is, too, and we had this discussion, and it's like that, I think Jay and then JG, and I even think Steven might have brought it up. He's like, no, he was so idealistic. And it's like, he was in his fucking teen.
Yeah, he was a teenager. He was in his 20s.
When I was 18 to 22, I was so fucking idealistic.
Yeah.
For our listeners that don't know, 3 years ago, I went through a very contentious and bitter divorce.
God, has it been 3 years?
Yes.
Wow.
I wanted everything. I was Luke Skywalker. I wanted everything to end. I wanted to walk away from it all. I wanted everything to end. And everybody was like, Luke Skywalker's a grumpy hermit. He turned away from everything. Yeah, he did.
Can you
blame
him?
And then what happened? What happened at the end of The Last Jedi? He came back and he told his nephew, funny, everything you learned and everything I tried to teach you that you listened to was wrong. Or I might have, but
no, I got you.
Yeah. He essentially said, funny, everything you just heard, that everything you thought I taught you or everything you said was wrong. He came back and stood up to the entire First Order.
He did exactly what he said he was going to do. What do you want me to do? Face down the whole First Order with a laser sword? He did it.
Yeah. So when you're saying he's a grumpy old hermit, guess what? I'm 42. And one of the things that I tell people I am related to, or I consider myself Shrek. which, by the way, they're coming out with Shrek 5 in 2026. Super excited about that.
I'm way too excited for that.
Same.
So, but guess what? Shrek just wanted to be left alone in his swamp. Shrek was a freaking hermit. But guess what? Everybody loves Shrek.
You grow up to be that. That's just what happens. Especially when you have kids,
grow up to be that.
That's what you grow up to be. That's what I come hide in my basement every chance I get. Leave the kids upstairs. I kick the kids out. Guys, go to the pool.
Guess what, Rex? You're Shrek now.
Go away. Like, yeah.
So,
don't get me wrong. I love all 3 of my kids, even though 2 of them aren't naturally mine. I love all 3 of my kids. I love them. I would die for them. But sometimes you just want to kick them the hell out of the house and just be like, go away. I need some time. I just need to if I need to get away, I go get on my motorcycle and I go ride around. I'm a hermit on my bike. I just go have me time, to think and to just unwind. That's just part of being an adult, and you're right. Luke Skywalker was so idealistic back then. So was I. And then now that I'm getting older and older, I'm like, I understand where my dad was coming from now. I totally get why my dad was like, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, I totally get it. Like, it makes sense.
So it's funny you should mention your father. And, about 5-6 months, actually, it was right before the holidays and everything. And getting back to my whole point is you become the thing that you swore you would never become, And that's essentially what Luke was trying to do in 4, 5, and 6. He was trying to say, I'm not going to be Uncle Owen. I'm going to go face everybody. I'm going to go face everything that you guys ran from. And he did. But then when it came back, later in his life, he ran, more or less. He ran from, the problem that happened. So about 5, 6, right before the holidays and everything, my lovely wife and I, we were cleaning the house because our kids weren't. And I literally went through, I had 2 full bags, trash bags, just me pulling. Yep. And I brought all the kids down and I said, I just spent the entire afternoon cleaning the house. We get one room cleaned up, they go next, they just,
right behind you.
I said, this will never happen again.
Swear to God, we live in a simulation.
And I said, if this does, I will take away every single piece of technology you have, and I will unplug every single piece of technology, and I will unplug the TV, and you guys will not have TV for a month.
I've threatened to light my
daughter said, that's not fair, Dad. Now, why is this similar? Because guess what? Everybody remembers that scene where Luke is telling him how he was going to turn his lightsaber and everything. Or better yet, in Return, Empire Strikes Back, where he's in the cave. He cuts off the Force vision of Vader, and it's his helmet. The voice of my father from 30 years ago came out of my mouth. And then what did I do 2 hours later? I called my father and I said, how did you do it? Yeah. So, Rex, look, I get it. This wasn't this wasn't the Luke Skywalker we wanted or people wanted. Because guess what? It's been 30 plus years since Return to the Jedi. Mark Hamill's in his 60s and 70s. Yeah, he still has a bit of humor. But guess what? Even watch him and listen to him occasionally. He's a cantankerous old man. So I'm like, we got the Luke Skywalker of 30 years later, worn down by war, worn down by his failures in life.
Yeah.
And you know what? We want Star Wars to be, you want Star Wars to be relatable? I don't know how any more relatable that is. So, Usef, I've been rambling. What do you think?
No, you haven't been rambling in the slightest. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That can't have been that easy. That was very special, honestly, to hear that personal stuff. We haven't gotten to a deep conversational level, me and you, but I really appreciate you sharing that. So thank you for that. This is always a safe space. People need to be able to vent and share whatever the hell they want. And the fact that you relate that to a Star Wars character that is an honor for Star Wars. I'm serious. Like, that's, if I'm a storyteller and I heard someone using my story to relate to it in something as deep as that, that's beautiful, I think. Rex and Brian and Nick and anybody who's on, anybody who's listening, I really want you guys to start thinking, I'll say it again, what would you rather see? And Brian, can I ask you for a favor? If you could type in a comment onto this video and potentially reply it to Rex, just tell him, hey, guess what? Like, we addressed your question. Reply to him and comment on the video with a link to the episode that we did talking about. So we did an episode. Gosh, is it 2 years ago now? A year ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Where we were, wow, time flies. Where we had a sort of, we named it The Trial of Luke Skywalker. We didn't do an awesome job of it, but we did. We were basically talking pros and cons and what we think were the positives and negatives, and everybody sort of took a stand. And I was on the stance. I think I was the only one at the time on the stance of the negatives of why I was against Luke Skywalker becoming that old hermit and sort of secluding himself and going into seclusion, isolation, and exile, the self-imposed exile. And I'm really against that. So everything that Brian said, positives, I completely understand where he's coming from. I personally have a different take, even if he wasn't necessarily going to be the god or the hero or that, I just, and the more I see of Luke Skywalker, especially when I saw him in Mandalorian, I'm like, whoa, that was insane. And in every episode, not just when he came in and took out those troopers, the droids, and later on when he was sort of like the master to Grogu, and we saw him there. And then when I'm going to start reading a few other novels with Luke in there, Luke and Lando Calrissian, can't remember the name of the novel, but it's on my Audible. I've already started it.
Shadows of the Sith.
Shadows of the Sith. So when you read, when you go back, when you go back, Rex, and watch what we said, there's always going to be stuff you can talk about, pros and cons. There's always going to be stuff, and this drama of having a cherished character that has so much lore and importance behind him, you're never going to get it right if you're the storyteller for everyone. There's just no way. That's not going to happen, right? This isn't Shrek. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't I don't know. This isn't Poe and Kung Fu Panda. This isn't whatever you want it to be. You know what I mean? This is such a dilemma. That's why it's a dilemma, because you can see it from many different sides. And obviously, you and I, Rex, we may think that, if we had the Force, we'd never do that. And then all of a sudden, when we're faced with all of this stuff,
it's different.
I would kill to see, hey, Lucasfilm, we only have a few years of Mark Hamill left. Give me everything you got. Give me everything you got of Luke turning into what we see in Episode 7. God, I'd love that. Oh, I would love that so much. As a matter of fact, that might be just the drink of the dark side I've been thirsting for, because he's going to be fighting those demons. He's going to be looking at that, and you're going to be hearing Snoke whispering into Kylo Ren's ears. Maybe not. You're going to be seeing the Knights of the Ren. There's so much in there that we could potentially look forward to. I don't think I'm ever going to get what I really want from Star Wars. And I'll do it soon, maybe next episode, maybe the one after, maybe whatever. And I'll tell you everything that I really want from Star Wars. And then potentially, because I want it so bad and I'm not going to get it from Star Wars, that I'm going to actually start looking for it in other franchises, stories, whatever. Like, I loved Star Wars. I fell in love with Star Wars because of Darth Sidious. The baddies and the Force and the Sith and the dark side, that resonated so much with because the bigger the villain, the bigger the hero. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so much that I was looking for a big hero or a big villain. It was because the story was so heavy. What could be darker than having Darth Sidious cackle while he sees the man he turned fight against his son? And he knows that the outcome is going to be in his favor. He was proven wrong in the end. And that's even, even bigger. And then you could just see, by the way, like George Lucas making this in the 70s and 80s with no thought toward, not no thought, but minimal thought towards what he can do in the future. Doing Sidious, you can see Sidious saying to Luke, "Strike down your father and take your place next to me," or whatever it is you were saying at that time. And and then Luke, amazing, oh my God, hero words here. You have failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi like my father before me. And then you see the expression change on Darth Sidious's face, and the camera lingers on him for just a couple of seconds. That second there, those few seconds, that lingering to let it sink into Darth Sidious, crap, that's so cool. Anyway, look, I'm wheezing here. I'm getting tired. It's almost 5 a.m.
Yeah,
Look, the thing is, no, that wasn't my point. I just meant.
Oh, I know.
I'm wheezing here. But seriously, the thing is that I'm never gonna see the best of what I want. I'm probably never. I really hope I do, and that's why I'm sticking with it. I love these stories. I love this kind of space. I love the lore evolving, and I hope you do too. I really, really do. Because if you dislike what the content is coming out, what the content is, you think Disney's spewing out stuff just because it's popular. That's what I felt because of ACOLYTE. Yeah, really. Yeah. Like, this is just young adult stuff. Sorry to categorize again. This is just stuff that, teens, but well, guess what? They're the majority of the market because Disney knows that I'm going to be constricted with time and money, that I'm not necessarily going to be running to build 50 lightsabers anymore. I mean, even if I have the money to do that, brother, I got to buy a car next year. So like, I'm going to save this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I just like, yeah, I really want to see so much stuff. I'm not the major market, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to just throw it all in the trash, and then all of a sudden just pick it up and just blow the dust off me. One day, long ago, I used to love this thing.
Did I ever tell you the tragedy of Luke Skywalker
anyway.
after Return of the Jedi?
So,
and the last Jedi.
So Usef,
but yeah, I just that's just my feeling on the whole thing. I've already expressed my views, but yeah, watch that episode, the trial of Luke Skywalker, which we had, and just because we agree with you to a very large extent that there's not inconsistencies, just there's constant dilemmas, so there's always a different opinion. And I think that's a positive, not a negative. And I might be too pragmatic to my own detriment, where I'm going to keep following a show or a franchise then not get what I love. Yeah, but that's kind of part of it. I think the more you watch something that you're not wanting to watch, then as soon as you see what you do want to watch, you're going to fall in love with it. It might not be in Star Wars. And that's the bitter truth that I have for myself. It might not be in Star Wars, but I still want it to be in Star Wars a lot. And every time I think of the potential, it's amazing. Thrawn, oh my God, he's going to be amazing, isn't he? Anyway, Nick.
So Usef, you said, what do I want to see in Star Wars? I will tell you right now what I want to see in Star Wars.
Go for it.
I just want good storytelling. Okay? That's all I want. Give me good storytelling. Like you said, I am the grumpy Jedi. Okay? That whenever I come on this podcast, that is what I will be referred to. I will be referred to as a grumpy Jedi. I am.
I think you should TM that.
I am. Oh, maybe. Better be careful.
You can sell it to Lucasfilm a year later,
or they'll sue me. One or the other. But anyways,
you won't be the first one on this podcast.
I want good storytelling. That's all I want. Do I want Game of Thrones-esque storytelling? I mean, that honestly, if Star Wars could actually even get to that level right now, I would actually be enthralled by that. And I think a Game of Thrones-esque storytelling in Star Wars would probably be, guess what? The Old Republic, and it's far back enough where you could pick all those characters, Exar Kun, Darth Revan, all those people, and bring them into canon. Guess what? They've already brought, I think, Darth Revan into. They mentioned him by name. They haven't brought him, in, but it's there. Okay, so we can do that. That's what I want. I don't care. We were talking about this on the break. The problem Star Wars has right now is all the behind the scenes crap. The changing of the directors, the announcing of films and everything that never get made, the announcing of shows that never get made. Besides the investors call in 2019 or 2020, in which we got the ACOLYTE, we got Andor. And what other shows got announced? Rangers of the New
Rogue
Republic.
Squadron got canceled.
Rogue Squadron, which got canceled. Guess what other show got announced and has since, it's going on 5 years? Lando,
yeah.
Oh,
and
the hell is that?
right.
The animated thing, the droid story that they announced.
Oh yeah, the animated droids.
Where'd
that go?
I want good stories, okay?
Yeah.
And you know what? I would much rather Lucasfilm, or let me rephrase that, the Star Wars branch of Lucasfilm, take their time and develop a story, develop a thing, develop a story, a timeline thing. So I am not a High Republic guy, but guess what? The one thing I will give Lucasfilm credit when it comes to the High Republic is they said, you know what? We're going to map this thing out from A to Z. So,
yeah.
And that's what I would love for. But if you're asking for a specific show or movie, quiet. I want the Old Republic. I want the Sith Wars and everything. I want Exar Kun to come in and everything like that. That's what I would want. I would love to see. Oh crap! Who is the creator of the Darksaber? I can't think of his name.
Oh, Vizsla. Yeah,
I would love to get that story. I would love to see a live action version of that. Show us that. We saw behind the scenes in Clone Wars and stuff. That's what I want. So Rex, if you're listening, rather than tell us I hate everything, okay, fine. You may hate everything. Tell us what you actually want. You're not getting the EU back. Just let that go. I'm with you on that. I'm 42. I grew up on the EU, but like Brian said, has a lot of inconsistencies. They fucking killed Chewbacca by crashing a moon on him.
Yeah, that happened. That's true. They dropped the moon on him.
But tell us what
I didn't know that.
you want. Tell us what you want.
That's how Chewbacca died in the EU. They
That's
were
a badass way to go, man.
The planet, he got hit by a moon. So the moon was coming to crash into the planet, and Han and his son Anakin, and Han and Leia named one of their sons Anakin Solo. He was piloting the Falcon, and Chewie was on the ground getting people off the planet onto the Falcon before the moon could crash. And Chewie didn't make it to the ship. Anakin had to take the ship off. And Han was yelling at him the whole time, go back, Chewie's still down there. And Anakin took off and left Chewie. And the last thing you see is Chewie's like his fist in the air, screaming as the moon crashes down. And Han didn't talk to Anakin for a long time after that.
Almost
and he painted the Falcon black. Yeah, he painted the Falcon black in memory of Chewie. Like, there was a lot there. So it was so there's a lot of stuff in EU that was like, what?
That hurts me thinking about it.
Yeah. But in a roundabout way. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Guess what? As much I think people seem to forget, because everybody thinks, oh, we were much more civil during the EU days. I'm calling bullshit.
We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the internet to yell at each other over.
Like, what?
There was no Facebook.
The guy that wrote that
people did
novel,
that at comic book stores and at comic.
The guy that wrote that novel, and it was in the New Jedi Order and everything. It was actually the first book of the New Jedi Order. The guy that wrote that novel was R.A. Salvatore.
Yeah.
He got death threats.
Yeah.
And then I went to a Comic-Con or a local Comic-Con convention in Wisconsin where I grew up. And they had a bunch of people, and it was essentially the Lucasfilm, the prelude to the Lucasfilm story group. And they had Michael A. Stackpole, which They need to bring
They
need to bring him back and write.
He should have wrote the Alphabet Squadron trilogy.
Yes,
he should have wrote that. Not I don't remember who wrote it. Not Alexander Freed. Alexander Freed. Instead of Alexander Freed writing that trilogy, it should have been Stackpole.
So
completely.
They literally asked, because he was on that story group and everything, and they literally said, "Why'd you have to kill Chewbacca?" That was the first question.
Somebody had to do it.
and they
the onus was on me.
They knew it was coming, and know what they said? They said, out of all the main characters in the original trilogy, the one we couldn't articulate the best was Chewbacca.
Yeah.
So,
but then Disney turns around and gives them a 5-issue comic run.
So look, Rex,
take it out.
We're all in agreement. Disney does have issues. Like I was not a huge fan of Book of Boba Fett. As I mentioned before, I am not a huge fan of the ACOLYTE. But they gave us some really great stuff. I love Rogue Squadron. Not Rogue Squadron, Rogue One.
Rogue One.
I'm going back right now. I'm loving the rewatch of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're asking me, like Usef, what do I want to see moving forward? Give me some
good old-fashioned storytelling.
Good old-fashioned storytelling. But if you're saying pick an era, give me something in the Old Republic. And then I would really love for them to kind of go into the prophecy about how the Chosen One prophecy came about and everything. So that's what I would want. Brian,
let's end on a positive-ish note, because I know we're going to talk about Lucasfilm until the cows come home. But, they're maneuvering. They're having to maneuver way too much for their own good, But what I'm very excited to announce to you guys, because I was very hesitant about it. Hopefully next week, I'm going to be pre-ordering Outlaws, and I'm going to be really excited. Yeah, I'm going to be placing my pre-order on PlayStation.
That's just over a month out. I think it's like 5.5, 6 weeks out.
I'm a commit, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done, and I'm really excited. You know what really pushed me over the edge? I just put in Red Dead Redemption 2 again into the PlayStation for like the 8th or 9th, 7th, 8th time, something like that. And I was like, okay, I need an open world I can get behind. And I'm really digging Star Wars again. And I need to, come on, let's get into this. And I renewed my Audible, and I got so many novels to get into. The only books there's so many books for Star Wars I haven't read yet. You're not going to like me for this, but unless you guys give me a definitive way, we got to work this out on this podcast, by the way, working out what Usef should read next for High Republic and how to get into it, because because I want to try to steer myself.
Let's do it.
And then when I read it and I do the Audible, because I can't, for the life of me, I can't get the books in here for hard copy, so I'm going to have to do the Audible, which I'm, it's positive and negative. Like, I'm happy with Audible, just I'm happier with books. But I mean, so hopefully that's my plan for the next semester. Because now that ACOLYTE's over, we gotta look to.
I got all mine on there.
Nice. So now that ACOLYTE's over, I want us to also hopefully have a plan for ourselves and for our listeners out there. Let's get back to looking at some stuff to look forward to. What's coming up after ACOLYTE? Yeah. What should we look into, which we may not have looked into before, that it's worth it? And then the Mace Windu book coming out end of the year. I want to talk about that later. So I want to brush up a little bit, talk to you about it outside, and then talk about it on the podcast, hopefully.
Right on.
All right.
Well, all of that basically to say, the EU and the canon both have good and bad stuff in it. It's just a matter of, opening your mind up to it. Don't get me wrong. There's things in the EU I really do like, and there's things that I don't like. The only EU book that I've read recently, I started Darth Plagueis because I had never read it before. And everybody told me I needed to read that one. So I ordered it specifically, which is another point to your question, Rex. Disney didn't just wipe all these stories away. They're still publishing them just under a Legends banner. They're not knocking down doors trying to.
Yeah, there's still Legends coming out. Absolutely.
To me. They're not taking your books from you. You still have your books. They didn't wipe anything away. They just said, that's a timeline. You can enjoy that one. We're going to make
And the legends are consistent with themselves. So that's great.
So I just want to throw that in there too. So if we don't have anything else to add, we are well over the 2 hour mark, 2.5 hour mark. So I want to thank Nick for joining me and Usef. Usef, I want to thank you. I know it's like 5 a.m. where you're at right now. We're recording this.
Always happy to talk Star Wars.
But thanks for joining us from across the pond, though, man. I know it's late, and it's always great to have you on, man. So thank you guys.
World. Jay's across the pond. I'm a little further away.
I call it
8 hours time.
I call it the pond.
8 out of 24. How many time zones in the world are there? Is it 12 or 24?
24 time zones.
24 yeah, well, I mean, the world is 24 hours, so of course
you're a third of the world away. You're a third of the world. Yep. So, but thank you guys for joining me. I do appreciate it. And definitely, I can't wait to have everybody on again. And it's great to be back on the mic with you guys. So if you guys don't have anything else we want to add for the week, we are going to sign off. Hope you guys have a great weekend.
I got to thank Rex.
Yeah, thanks Rex for the great combo. So and let us know, man. Let us know what your response is to all of this. Yeah, we're not trying to shirk away from you or anything. So if we don't have anything else, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll light you guys up next week. May the force be with you.
See you guys. May the force be with y'all.
You've just been listening to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. You can catch new episodes of the podcast every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on whatever platform you're listening on right now. If you like this episode, do us a huge favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons and give us a follow so you're notified whenever new content drops. If you'd like to get a mailbag question on the show, you can email us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and check out our website, www.starwarscanon.net. Those links can be found in the description of this episode. All opinions expressed on this show are those of the speaker and may not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of everyone else involved on the panel. This show is produced and edited by me, Brian Miller, with music composed by Brook Munro.